Started. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, board members and members of the public. Let's call to order the MTA's March board meeting. Safety announcement to be followed by public speakers.
Your safety is of the foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen and adhere to the following instructions. If you witness an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and call 911 immediately. Please follow any audible instructions provided through the public address system or visually on screens in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell B down the hallway past the elevators. If you have a mobility disability or cannot self-evacuate, please proceed to stairwell D or E for assistance by MTA staff or emergency personnel. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please tell an MTA staff member or emergency personnel. Thank you and have a safe day.
Jonathan, public speakers.
Good morning and welcome to the MTA's board meeting public comment session. Today, we have 31 members of the public registered to speak today. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. I would also like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Our first speaker is Adam Schmidt, followed by Jack Nierenberg.
Good morning. I'm Adam Schmidt, and I serve as the Senior Research Associate for Transportation at the Citizens Budget Commission. New Yorkers are still waiting for Albany to step up and identify funding to support the MTA's need for massive capital investment. Neither the governor nor the legislature have put forth a public proposal to close a more than $30 billion funding gap. Uncertainty in Washington increases the need to act now, and further delay means more deterioration, more breakdowns, and higher costs. Released last Friday, CBC's report, All Aboard, How to Fairly Fund MTA Capital Investment Now, recommended that the state and MTA do 5 things. First, focus capital investment exclusively on projects to repair and improve the system. Second, increase the state contribution by $7 billion, primarily by shifting funds from lower impact programs, and increase the city contribution by $2 billion. Third, moderately increase fares, tolls, and vehicle registration fees to support $6.8 billion in bonds. Fourth, ensure labor provides the flexibility to find $500 million in recurring operating budget savings. And fifth, turn the tide on fare evasion. Still, the capital plan would need another $16 billion. State leaders might choose to close this gap with further state and city appropriations, user fees and charges, or maybe even taxes. Critical, though, is that they focus on preserving New York's competitiveness and spreading funding fairly across the riding, driving, and tax-paying beneficiaries of the MTA system. To ensure cost-effective capital delivery and increase public confidence, funding should be coupled with accountability measures that require the MTA to publish capital project schedules and costs, provide annual updates on project progress and asset conditions, and complete a study with an external partner to determine why MTA capital projects are so expensive. Underfunding the necessary state of good repair work and basic modernization projects in this capital plan puts the transit system and with it the economic health of our region at risk. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jack Nierenberg, followed by Lisa Daglian.
Everyone, I'm Jack Nierenberg. I'm the Vice President of Passengers United. And personally, I've been an Omni user for, I would say, the last 5-something years. I know many of you are as well. You know who isn't yet? People on Nice Bus and Beeline. And with the announcement that the MTA is discontinuing the Metro card at the end of the year, we've been getting numerous concerns that people on Nice Bus and Beeline will not have the fare boxes necessary to use Omni. So what happens when Metro cards discontinue? They can't get their Metro cards. And if the readers are not installed on all the buses yet, then what happens to people in Westchester and Nassau counties? So I want a commitment from this board that they will not discontinue the MetroCard until the nice buses and the Beeline buses have the necessary fare boxes and people can actually get the Omni cards or whatever they need to use Omni on those buses so that they're not left stranded. And speaking of Nassau County, or close to Nassau County, I'm so glad that we're finally seeing work being done on the Hollis station. I know that the construction has just started. That's great. And there need to be replacement buses as well. And a lot of people, we've been getting concerns from people who use the station, and especially those who can't get access to the platform. And we could use replacement buses for Hollis Station. We see replacement buses for every other shutdown, every other line, except the main line. And it would really help so many people. So thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Lisa Daglian, followed by Christopher Greif.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Daglian. I'm the Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA. First pitch for New York baseball is on deck. Yankee fans heading to the Bronx tomorrow and Mets fans boarding a 7 next Friday will be able to take vintage chains to the old ball games at the stadium of their choice. The Flushing faithful, like me, are looking forward to the rare opportunity. New York baseball and our transit system have a lot in common. It's a challenging time of uncertainty for both, yet there is palpable excitement for what can be. Each team already has unanticipated injuries, but like true New Yorkers, they're brushing themselves off and moving ahead. The MTA also faces uncertainty, but the consequences are far more substantial. Instead of millions of dollars in player salaries on the line, millions of riders' daily commutes are at risk from the aging system that still uses switches and signals from the Prohibition era, with some train cars older than my kids, and I don't mean the vintage train cars. It's a lot harder to rehab the aging components of our vital transit network, as we've seen through terrible periods like the summer of hell, when disinterest and disinvestment overtake public interest and sustained investment. It isn't good for riders, our city, the region, or New York's economy. A fully funded 25-29 capital plan will help set the MTA on a path to safer, more accessible, and reliable transit network that riders deserve. The proposed plan would generate $106 billion in economic output and more than 72,000 jobs over 5 years across the state. It's critical it's fully funded in order to realize these benefits and literally keep our region moving. We need Albany and D.C. to play ball. New Yorkers love to complain about our subways, trains, and buses, and our teams. We can change at least one of those things this year, starting with a fully funded capital plan. As for our teams, well, as a Mets fan, I gotta believe. Thank you.
The next speaker is Christopher Greif, followed by Omar Vera.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christopher D. Greif, ADA, President of the Accessibility. Forgive me, everyone. I'm a little very disappointed with our elected officials this morning, as I had to hear what they had to say. The new MTA has been doing a fine job. But again, how they come to, then I have not once mentioned accessibility at train stations, buses, Accessoride, and reminding our officials today and the press, I challenged them to go on the Accessoride with my mother to see where they get stuck, where congestion pricing is going well, and look at it on the accessibility feats or wheelchairs or a walker. Because what I have to hear this morning's news, and I'm very disappointed with the Staten Island elected officials. They have traffic. They have not fixed their roads. They have not fixed they don't want to work fixing the bridge. And I don't want to see the Valenzano Bridge, which I can see from my window, going crumbling down. I'm a person with a disability. My mother is a disability. We have disability communities here. Not everyone shows. But here's the problem. We as people with disability want accessibility. I want an elevator. I want a ramp. I want things that we can move forward. Why we always got to hear, oh, the MTA is stealing money. They're not even here. They're not even looking at they're not looking at the books. Years ago, we didn't have all that information. Now we do. It's there. And everyone is saying, oh, they're stealing the money. What money stolen? You have not given us enough safety for accessibility. And as an advocate with people with disability, the future accessibility rides with us. We ride on these buses. We ride Access-A-Ride. We ride every public transportation. And I hope that everyone hears me out there in the world of New York and anywhere out there. Focus on accessibility. Mention it. Thank you.
The next speaker is Omar Vera, followed by Rachel Foss.
I just walked into the room just a few minutes ago, right when Chris started speaking. So I'm here, so I had time to prepare. Now I'm ready. So welcome to the March edition of your board meeting. This month, as I pointed out Monday, thanks for standing firm on congestion pricing. The program's working well. Public opinion has changed drastically in favor of this program. And like I said, even the New York Post admits that the feds have no way of winning this in courts. They can't win it the legal way. So keep standing firm. Congestion pricing for all. Now I also like to mention briefly the Rockaway service, the service plan that's currently ongoing. When it finishes, this presents a golden opportunity for you to modify the Rockaway service plan, as Andrew suggested over here, that all A service the Rockaways, Rockaway Park, Rockaway, and then the C will be a full-time extended to Lefferts Boulevard, where in late nights it could be a shuttle, the Liberty Avenue shuttle between Euclid and Lefferts, as it is like now, except it's called the A shuttle, but it will be the C shuttle in the new plan. And yes. Oh, and I'm wondering if since you mentioned that MetroCard sales will stop at the end of this year, are you gonna create a 30-day unlimited Omni card or what? Just wondering. With that said, I still do like the fare cap program. That's very good. With that said, everything's good, and see you around next month.
The next speaker is Rachel Foss, followed by Alita Dupree.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Foss. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor for reInvent Albany. We advocate for more transparent and accountable New York government. Just yesterday, we are proud to join legislators and advocates in Albany in support of full funding for the MTA 2025-29 capital plan. Unfortunately, there's not yet a plan that has seen the light of day, and Albany is talking about repeating in 2025 what it did in 2022, raising the payroll mobility tax for just New York City employers. Our new analysis with the NYU Marin Institute of Urban Management of the last 25 years of MTA capital spending makes a strong case for why suburban elected officials should support both congestion pricing and investment in the 2025 to 29 capital plan, funded by regional taxes or fees. In the 5 capital plans from 2020 through 2024, the MTA has spent or will spend $194 billion in constant 2024 dollars. As expected, our analysis found that capital spending is far higher per commuter rail rider than it is for New York City Transit, subway, or bus rider. After we adjusted spending, we found that Long Island Railroad got an average of $18.70 per rider each year. Metro North was second at $10.15 per rider, and New York City Transit was last at $2.57 per rider. The 2 commuter railroads have about 3% each of MTA ridership, but have gotten a hugely disproportionate share of capital spending. Long Island Railroad received 19% of capital spending, Metro North 10%, and New York City Transit receives 72%, though it has 93% of riders. As Albany finalizes the state budget, we hope they do right by New Yorkers and fully fund the plan while ensuring that new taxes, fees, and revenues to support it are regional. Given generous investments in Long Island Railroad and Metro North, regional support will ensure the funding plan is both fair and sustainable. Thank you for your consideration.
The next speaker is Alita Dupree, followed by Robert Whitaker.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Janno Lieber and members. Alita Dupree for the record sheet, Hurwitz Team Volt. It's good to be back with you. Thank you for the hospitality. I used the subway this morning. It was fine. on a new week of Omni. I use the subway a lot. I usually go through the 12 rides by the time of the end of the third day, so that's a very good thing. Still a lot more to do and learn. I am concerned about 53rd and Lexington. We've been having some escalator issues in that station, and I think I can make the climb, but I'm not sure if I want to test myself sometimes. So sometimes I ride back over to Fifth Avenue. Other than that, everything's pretty much working the way it should. I hope we can get some kind of Wi-Fi and cell coverage in the tunnels. BART has this in the Bay Area. I rode through one of the tunnels in Oakland on BART, and I was able to change an airline ticket while riding BART like 50 feet under the streets of Oakland. BART is based in Oakland. I often refer to them as the People's System. Hope you all get to see it sometime if you haven't. I hope we can have a renewable energy powered subway. I think we can get there because we can drive that. And I did enjoy seeing the Williamsburg bus charging station with the pantograph. So I believe in the electric buses. We really want to stay after that because sometimes I'm on one of those and, well, it stops and we have to get off. And I don't want to have to do damage control. I want to see that work done. So, you can never have enough subway. I can never have enough subway. The system that is legendary and stately. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
The next speaker is Robert Whitaker, followed by Jason Anthony.
Good morning. My name is Robert Whitaker. I'm a local 100 bus operator living and working out of the borough of Brooklyn. I wear many hats. One as a bus operator, one as a state and local taxpayer, and a local community board member. For today's purpose, I will mainly focus on the title as bus operator. Over my 17-year career, I have been disrespected, assaulted, threatened by the public, the employees, management, and union reps, and have had many OEEO cases committed against me and covered up. And the MTA has stolen money out of my pocket, out of my family's pocket. Today is no more. The MTA's Transit workers place violence policy is flat out broken. New York City Transit does not care about its employees. Anybody who could tell me that with a straight face, I will call it how. I am calling on the New York State Attorney General to investigate the MTA and New York City Transit for its failed policies to protect its employees. Now we get to the main event. The MTA is saying that it does not tolerate the steering of any kind and that there are consequences. The MTA's workers' comp department is an absolute dumpster fire. The MTA has stolen money out of my pocket, my family's pocket, and my health. My caseworker, Digna Rodriguez, has lied on paperwork and has kept me from getting proper medical care. Her manager, past and present, are allowed to hurt as many workers as possible. I get the process of preventing fraud and all, but why deny workers that are currently injured from getting proper medical care? If you cannot turn around and honor your workers with proper medical care here, then you guys need to be investigated for violating workers' comp laws. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jason Anthony, followed by Anna Humphrey.
Good morning, Jana. Good morning, Paige. Good morning, board members in this Women's International Month. I want to recognize, first of all, every single woman in the MTA because without women, the world couldn't exist. And I want to recognize every single woman here on the MTA, especially Jay Patel, Paige Graves, Rachel Cohen, Julia Richardson, and others, especially Lula Zapata, who was recognized in this week's City and State. Well, thank you for the applause, but I want to mention several names. Sean Patrick Duffy, Christy Lynn Arnold Nome, Thomas Douglas Holman, Donald John Trump. why I'm mentioning those names? They have been mentioning our beloved system. And yours truly is demanding the MTA Inspectors General to initiate an investigation against Christy Nin Arnold Nom because she went to the Coney Island terminal to investigate an incident there this past December without the MTA's intervention. And we invite Sean Patrick Duffy to show up in person in the next Finance Committee and to the MTA's full board because our beloved Neil Zuckerman did it on Monday and we're doing it today as well.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
see you next month.
The next speaker is Anna Humphrey, followed by Kalia Hazlett.
Good morning. My name is Anna Humphrey, and I'm the Transportation Community Organizer with the Center for Independence of the Disabled, New York. I'm here to raise concerns regarding the accessibility of the MTA's express bus service and to highlight the findings of a recent report from the New York City Comptroller's Office. The Comptroller's audit uncovered significant failures in MTA bus service for riders with disabilities. A staggering 25% of wheelchair users could not board buses due to lift issues, and many buses failed to operate on schedule. Additionally, many drivers are untrained in proper lift operation, leaving riders stranded or experiencing delays. I'm here to call for immediate action, including refresher training for drivers and better bus design to ensure full accessibility. As we move forward, especially now that the federal deadline to deactivate congestion pricing cameras has passed this past Friday and has now been extended, we urge the MTA to continue advocating for the program. The Express Bus report highlights the ongoing need for accessibility investment, and congestion pricing is crucial to achieving the fully accessible transit system that all New Yorkers deserve. Thank you.
The next speaker is Kalia Hazlett, followed by Andrew Fine. The next speaker is Andrew Fine, followed by Mark Sacamaga.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The MTA's framing of congestion pricing is intentionally insincere and deceptive. Cherry picking would be an understatement. We're being gaslit and subject to propaganda on a daily basis. A few examples. When the MTA released traffic statistics for January claiming a 7.5% reduction in the traffic, the number they compared it to was not January of 2024, but a blended average of the past 3 Octobers and adjusted for January. In other words, the statistics showed whatever the MTA wanted. Second, the online congestion tracker that is often pointed to shows the effect of traffic on 19 locations uses similar sleight of hand. These include statistics that have been comparing January and February of this year to an average of May through August plus December of 2024. Again, I will tell you that it snows a lot less in August than it does in January or February. Finally, in the MTA's lawsuit against the federal government, the MTA cites a Morning Consult poll that claims 6 in 10 New Yorkers say that we should keep congestion pricing. This is taking a 27% approval rating and spinning the heck out of it. A closer look shows that the question was posed by asking, would you like your taxes to go up or keep congestion pricing? I'm sure if they asked if you would want to be thrown in front of a train or just keep congestion pricing, it would poll even higher. Let's just stop the gaslighting here. Let's present the actual statistics like sales tax revenue. And please explain to me why the MTA takes 23 cents to collect $1. And according to their own numbers, they came in lower than expected by 5 million. So they were expecting to waste 28 cents to collect $1. Anyway, I'm not sure who their accountant is, but they should work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Mark Sacamagno, followed by Michael Rang.
My name is Mark Sacamagno, and I'm a excuse me. I am a bus operator from Olmo Park in Brooklyn. Last week was Transportation Employees Appreciation Day, and I don't feel like I am appreciated. Last year in July, I was injured on the job in the depot. I was taken out of the depot by ambulance and spent a week in a hospital. I had a fractured foot. I feel that I am disrespected, neglected, and abused by transit. My claim was controverted by transit, and I am denied medical treatment. I took the case to court. I won the case. The judge established my case, and then transit appealed it. Right now, it's sitting up in the appeal board in Albany. There's a wait of 6 to 8 months, and so far it's been there for 3 months. I am still in pain. And the doctor says if my foot did not heal right, I am facing surgery. I have not been paid since July. I am facing eviction. My lights are being threatened to be turned off, and I have to stand online for over an hour in bad weather to get food. After 14 years working for this company, I don't feel like I was appreciated, and I want somebody to try to help. The Attorney General should investigate. Something should be done. It's happening to too many of us. Every time somebody gets hurt, it's controverted. And thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Michael Ring, followed by Jean Ryan.
Good morning. My name is Michael Ring. If anyone needs a verbal description of my appearance, I'm just a 61-year-old white guy, still need a shave, wearing a hoodie. My hat says Disabled in Action. That's the organization I'm representing today. I wanted to talk about accessibility in the very big picture of what that means. In the small picture, Disabled in Action is one of the members of a lawsuit that's suing the MTA over getting elevators repaired quicker. The settlement of our lawsuit is that in 30 years, 95% of the stations will have elevators. But that's a long way away, and that's not really a big deal. I want to talk about what the big deal of accessibility is. This building right here, we are on the 20th floor. Everyone has a mobility impairment that prevented them from walking up the stairs today. I'm pretty confident no one walked up the stairs. No one probably can't walk up the stairs here. But I bet most people didn't know that one of the elevators is broken. And it was just a seamless entry into the building. That you have enough elevators that everyone who wants to come to work can go to work and you can go home. You didn't have to make a phone call before 5 p.m. yesterday and decide when you wanted to come up to your floor and when you wanted to go home at the end of the day, and you're allowed to change your mind if you want to have lunch and come and go from the building. The building is accessible. And it would be great in the big picture if the whole MTA system would be as accessible as we are right now, that everyone was able to get up to the 20th floor without having to worry about walking upstairs. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jean Ryan, followed by Iris Kelly.
That's going to be good. Still? Hi. I hope so. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Jean Ryan, president of Disabled in Action of Metropolitan New York. I plan to take the X27 or X28 express bus home later today. That is, I hope to get on the bus in a timely manner. Get on, and then in a timely manner, ride it, and then get off on the lift, not waiting an hour for the firefighters to lift me off and then lift my 400-pound wheelchair down from the high door. But I never know. There's never a guarantee that when the bus comes that I can even get on the bus or off the bus like everyone else. Just because, the bus will probably pass me by, and I'll have to wait for the next one. Just because there are lifts on an express bus doesn't mean that they are accessible. Most drivers do not know how to use the finicky lifts or how to move the seats so we have a parking space. Are over-the-road buses absolutely required for express buses? I heard they have to be over-the-road buses because they go on the highway, but now I hear that's not required. Which is it? Required or not? People with mobility disabilities cannot reliably get on and off the over-the-road buses. That's not right. That's not accessibility. A different kind of bus is needed so express bus service will be truly accessible. I suggest a redesign to a low-floor ramp design where everyone can get into the bus in the same place. If not, we will take a different bus that we can easily get onto no matter the comfort of the other passengers.
Thank you.
So access trumps
Thank you.
comfort. And it's time
Thank
people
you.
with mobility disabilities can
Thank you
count.
for your comment. The next speaker is Irish Kelly, followed by Miriam Fisher.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. There's issues on the Long Island Railroad for Brooklyn people. I don't like the way they have the timeline set up between the track and time connections. There's a train during the weekday. Okay, I'm coming from Huntington, the 917. I pull into Jamaica at 10:04. Okay, then our Brooklyn train is 10:04. But the other one goes from you can't give them time to go from track 2 to track 12. That discussing you cannot let them two be connected back to back together. Instead, you have it further away going way over track 12. The other day, you had a train of 5:48, actually on track 3, where I think they should always be, regardless what the issue is. I saw it the other night, what's going on to Long Island, how you had that. But yeah, at night, I'm going 10:04, I should be able to get the 10:04 connection. Not wait half an hour for the 10:37, which is not right. And then the elevation of signs, okay? You originally had, in January last 2023, you had eye levels perfect between track 6 and 7. But then, Grand Central comes to town, take that away and put both advertisements. You don't need two of them being advertisements. One should be for people able to see the trains coming. I shouldn't have to be on my tippy toes to try to read the track train change you have listed up there. And then for the elevators, you have money put away for this oversight for Second Avenue trains. No, that money should be used towards elevators. I think your top priority right now is you get those elevators in the subway and you know, keep the maintenance of those elevators because there are more people who want to get into the train and get things done in this city, help everything else in the community. Not waiting for something in the future. That's already down the road, but get your priority done first. Elevators in and fixed. Thank you.
The next speaker is Miriam Fisher, followed by Kalia Hazlett.
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes.
I wish to thank the MTA for approving elevators at 8th Avenue and 23rd Street in Chelsea. We had great community support, including our electeds, and we see that MTA got the message and that you're listening. Also, I want to put better bus stops on the radar. There are 15,000 bus stops in New York City, but only 17% have benches, only 20% have shelters from the weather, which will be more extreme with climate change. The outer boroughs, especially Queens and the Bronx, in the lowest income areas are the worst offenders. There are fewer subways in these boroughs. Many people must rely on buses, sometimes two buses, to get to the subway. Long commute, whether to work, medical appointments, personal recreation, and connections. In January, Manhattan Community Board Transportation Committee sent a letter to the DOT President Ed Pinkar and to the MTA President Demetrius Critchlow after a walk down busy 23rd Street specifically identified 6 barren stops with only poles. And they included seats with back support for people with spinal disabilities, such as myself, who cannot use the leaning benches that are being discussed. That's not at all helpful for me. and get the need for better bus stops on the radar, on the menu. New bus line configurations are being proposed on 42nd and 34th Street to speed up traffic, reduce car usage. Hey, remember to check the bus stops too while you're doing all that change. It benefits the whole community. We don't have to want to stand in the snow waiting for our next bus. Thank you for listening.
The next speaker is Kalia Hazlett, followed by Deborah Greif.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kalia Hazlett, and I'm a member of the TRC and the PCAC. And I'm here to address the baby stroller pilot program. I went myself to Manhattan and up to the Bronx and identified some of the buses that are participating in the program. And I spoke with some of the bus operators that are actually driving those buses, and they had no clue what I was talking about. Thank goodness I got the opportunity to show one of the bus operators what the program was about. He was really open to it. I think it's time for the MTA to make the difference, to define the difference between a baby stroller and an adaptive medical stroller. Because according to your policy, when a parent brings their baby on board, they're supposed to take the baby out, close the stroller, and walk onto the bus. But if you have an adaptive medical stroller and a child with a disability, you cannot do that. And so that stroller needs to be secured like a wheelchair, and that parent or PCA needs to be treated with safety and with dignity. It's time for us to make a change. And what happens when you do that is you empower the bus driver to enforce the language, enforce priority seating. And we know we've been having a problem with that. I teach my children, if you lead with love, you never go wrong. Now it's time to compel the public to give up that priority seating and to teach everyone the difference between a baby stroller and adaptive medical equipment. This is an easy fix. This is an easy fix. Thank you so much.
The next speaker is Deborah Greif, followed by David Kuffenberg.
Okay. Good morning. Can you hear?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good morning. My name is Deborah Gray. Good morning, everyone. Sorry I'm not there in person. My community board had a very raucous meeting and my leg was injured. First of all, I want to say, I don't care what any of the other speakers said, but I've seen improvements with congestion pricing because I've had to come in by accessory for evening meetings. So that means I'm coming when everybody's leaving to go out of Manhattan and I'm going in. And actually, I got in quicker than I ever did. I was pleased beyond belief. I also am very glad that we need to repair not just only our buses, trains, and the stations, but we also have to make repairs to all the roadways going into all the MTA bridges and tunnels. Sitting in access ride, you get bumped around a lot. That's why I invited anybody who wants to come ride with me who's with the press or elected official, but I see no one's taking that up. Number two, I'm very tired of the baby bus stroller policy for this reason. I have a mobility device. I can't half the time get on because the driver has told the mother, it's not a medical device, take and pick the baby up, go to the back. No, they have to sit there. So I have to either give up, not get on the bus, or I have to stand, and I'm legally not supposed to. So please, let's fix this policy once and for all and make sure that the drivers are trained that if it's a medical device with a baby, child, that's fine. But still, the other one's in the back. They gave them a space in the back for their stroller to be, and only one stroller. And I'm tired of hearing them say, I don't speak English. I'm sorry, disrespectful. Again, this needs to be fixed and addressed. Thank you.
The next speaker is David Kuffenberg, followed by LaShane Lindsay.
As I said before,
Bus stop balancing is a mindless implementation of standard practices by the MTA and NYC-DOT without the consideration of the effects of their actions. There is no correlation between bus speed and passenger travel time. If a bus route has many bus stops but only stops at a few of them, the elimination of bus stops has little, if any, effect on bus speed. Potential passengers, however, must walk further on average to reach a bus stop, increasing passenger travel time. This also significantly increases the chance of a misconnection. For infrequent service, a misconnection could also discourage bus usage. Bus stop balancing must always be analyzed on a case-by-case basis in order to increase bus speed without significant negative impacts on passenger travel time. No formulas. In conclusion, there must be a moratorium on the elimination of bus stops until fair and unbiased borough-wide studies are complete. Bus stop balancing has demonstrated that the MTA and NYC-DOT are only concerned about bus speed, not passenger travel time. They are pretending that they will make improvements in speed travel. It is dishonest and wrong. They cannot be trusted.
The next speaker is Shane Lindsay, followed by Tony Loeb.
Good morning, everyone. My name is LaShane Lindsay. I'm the New York Organizing Manager with Jobs to Move America. We work to ensure public money creates quality, family-sustaining jobs, and I'm here today to renew a call we made to the chair and board this past December to release the information the MTA contractor Kawasaki was required to provide about the wages of workers producing subway cars for the agency's multi-billion-dollar rail car contract. In December, the chair and the board also received letters signed by state legislators, unions, and watchdog organizations echoing our call for transparency. In December, the board chair said that he would look into the matter, but we haven't heard anything since then. Over 6 years ago, JMA worked closely with this board and the MTA to integrate an innovative tool into your RFP to manufacture the R211 rail cars. The RFP requested the bidders complete a U.S. employment plan, a worksheet provided by the U.S. Department of Transportation that provided information on how many jobs would be created, the wages paid for those jobs, and related information on hiring and training. When Kawasaki won the bid, these legally binding commitments outlined in the U.S. employment plan required ongoing reporting of them. We made repeated requests since 2018 under the New York Freedom of Information Law to obtain the original job worksheet and subsequent reports Kawasaki made to the MTA to see where commitments were made and if they were fulfilled. What we got back were documents that were mostly redacted documents. MTA justified its decision to classify information about worker wages and benefits as quote-unquote trade secrets, with an affidavit with the audacity to claim that releasing the full data would unnecessarily agitate Kawasaki workforce, which has not felt the need to unionize for more than 40 years. As a proudly unionized public agency, this is not the standard we should have for companies that do business with the MTA. Certainly not for ones that with the biggest contract.
Thank you for your comment.
Has. Thank you.
The next speaker is Tommy Loeb, followed by Joe Rappaport.
Thank you. I want to expand on this myth of the MTA spinning on some of the successes of congestion pricing. Recent data points to the fact that hotel occupancy in Manhattan is the highest it's been in years. Hotel in lower Manhattan has hit an all-time high. That is why when you hear issues like number one, Broadway theater ticket sales are up. We know why they're up. First of all, there are more plays on Broadway this year than in past years. Secondly, we have some of the most successful plays in history, including some of the highest priced plays in history on Broadway right now with some of the biggest superstars. So combine that with some of the highest hotel occupancies in the past several years, that can account for an increase in Broadway ticket sales. The same applies to retail sales. The more people you put into the zone in hotels, they will obviously spend more money. So retail sales will obviously go up in the zone when hotel occupancies are at an all-time high. The same goes for pedestrian activity. The more activity you have in the zone, and the more hotel occupancy, the more pedestrians you're going to have. So lastly, if my child was bringing a grade in of 50%, and that's what the MTA revenue is now on congestion pricing, I wouldn't say that was a success. I'd say that's a failure. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Joe Rappaport, followed by R. Mitchell.
Good morning. I'm Joe Rappaport of the Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled. Yesterday, Jose Martinez reported in the city that congestion pricing has reduced travel times for Accessoride. He quoted one rider, Milagros Franco, who said, "I was against congestion pricing because I felt sorry for the people who had to pay the tolls. But when I started to realize how quickly I get to work, I saw that it's amazing, almost phenomenal." Congestion pricing is working for New Yorkers, and it is bringing in sorely needed money to the MTA. So I urge anyone on this board with a relationship with the Trump administration, who in the past has opposed congestion pricing, to look at the evidence as Ms. Franco did and contact the White House and urge it to back off on congestion pricing. No matter what happens, we need a fully funded 2025-2029 capital program. So I urge anyone here with a relationship with the Hochul administration to make that clear. Disability groups today will send a letter to Governor Hochul urging her to keep her word when she touted the landmark agreement we made in 2022 to make subway stations accessible. My administration will continue to ensure that New York State is accessible to all, she said. Finally, we and other disability groups will be out at the Times Square station tomorrow at noon handing out masks. Masks are the best way to prevent airborne diseases like COVID, RSV, and the flu. The governor has proposed banning masks with a flimsy health and religious exemption that no one believes will work. As the Daily News wrote, are we really ready to enter a world in which police, when patrolling the streets, are trying to make these distinctions? We sure don't want the police unnecessarily harassing disabled people in the subways, nor should you. We urge you to reach out to the governor and tell her to drop this foolish plan. Thank you.
The next speaker is R. Mitchell, followed by Yolanda Aline.
Yes, good morning. I think it's important that we call BS each and every time where possible. The MTA is loading itself over this congestion pricing and all the extra money. Chairman Lieber mentioned that there's additional service on, I think it was 14 subway or bus routes. I'm not really sure where those are because I take the subway and bus and the express bus every day. And whether it's the B1, the Q1, the M1, they all run terribly. Each weekend, there is some major cutting off major swaths of the city, to major trunk transit lines. And the only alternative are inadequate shuttle bus service, or if you're more recently a reduced fare rider, they're actually allowing you to ride the Metro North. But that was a change because originally it was supposed to be allowed for all passengers. Additionally, I think that as far as the security scenario goes, back in 2021, the governor then got on and the then chairman spoke about how there were cameras in all stations. I got on a train at Dyckman Street and I still see on the A line, and I still see the mounts for the cameras have not been installed. You go to 207th Street on the one line, there's still plastic bags with the contract ticket number over them over a year after they've been installed. There are some stations that have hundreds of cameras downtown, Bowling Green, actually I was just at yesterday, multiple cameras in and out and near the entrance of the station. You go to other parts of the city, there are none. And then you say, hey, congestion pricing is working, but where's the additional bus service? You're on 34th Street. Yes, there's no traffic, but the M34 select bus still runs terribly. You make all this hoopla about how buses run great, but of course you go on 14th Street where it's the only dedicated busway in the city. It's all bullshit.
The next speaker is Yolanda Aline, followed by Albert Kokorian. The next speaker is Albert Kokorian, followed by Jeffrey Betts.
Good morning. My name is Yolanda Ali. I'm here to talk about Stress-A-Ride. Each time I speak about Stress-A-Ride, I get more aggravated and more stressed out with the nonsense that's taking place. On March 9th, a friend of mine went to a concert. It was finished at 9:30. Pickup was supposed to be 10 after 10. No one from Stress-A-Ride showed up until after midnight. What nonsense is that? Do anybody here, you go to a concert and you have to sit for almost more than an hour, 2 hours waiting to get home? The following day, the same person, she missed her doctor's appointment. She had 2 doctor's appointments scheduled. Guess what? Stress-A-Ride didn't show up on time, so she missed her appointment. Then there was all kind of confusion because they didn't cancel the ride to take her to the doctor. Most ridiculous. What incompetence is that? And here you come. Every month you hear, 79%. Anywhere in the United States, any corporate would not be satisfied with a 79% performance. That's ridiculous. That's a C. Even in high school, if you get a C, your parents are not happy. What kind of nonsense is that? It's most ridiculous. We need to get a better system and a better service for people. People don't take Stress-A-Ride because they want to. They take it because they need to. Because most people rather take a subway or a bus because even with the stupid blue and white van, every time you get in it, they don't have good shocks to absorb some of the things. And New York City don't have the very best street. Most ridiculous. Each time we speak about Stress-A-Ride, it has not improved in all the years. It even get a little worse. We need to get
Thank you for your
better
comment.
service. Thank you.
As a reminder, speakers may not use profanity or vulgar language. The next speaker is Albert Kokorian, followed by Jeffrey Betts.
Hi, hope you can hear me. I live on 13th Street and 7th Avenue in Manhattan. I often drive to visit my disabled brother at his home in Ossining, New York, in Westchester County. Presently, my brother is a patient at Sarah Newman Nursing Home in Mamaroneck in Westchester County. And I visit him, he's there battling esophagus cancer. When I visit him 2 and 3 times a week to support him. And each time, if I come home before 9 p.m., traveling down the West Side Highway, when I get off on 16th Street, I have to pay $9 just to go home due to congested pricing. I already pay property tax as a homeowner in the congested pricing zone. I pay tax while parking my car in a local garage here, which I do get a slight deduction, which is fair. I also pay tax on goods that I purchase in the area and the regular tolls traveling back and forth to visit my disabled brother in Westchester. Why do I, as a resident in congested pricing relief zone, have to also pay the congested pricing toll? Shouldn't the residents residing in the congested pricing zone be granted an exemption from congested pricing toll? I feel it's totally unfair that the residents living in the congested pricing zone have to pay the congested pricing toll to drive in and out of the congested pricing zone just to get home. I also do not hear, in all due respect, Governor Hochul or Chairman Lieber ever mentioning the financial burden the congested pricing is having on residents living in congested pricing zone. The governor often states he is fighting for New Yorkers considering this issue while not mentioning the burden it puts on residents who live in the congested pricing zone. While the governor she's not fighting for me, as I feel congested pricing toll is totally unfair to New York residents living in congested pricing zone. Please get an exemption for the residents living in congested pricing zone.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jeffrey Betts.
Great morning, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Kazembe Betts. I'm here on behalf of my Bedford-Stuyvesant community. On May 19th, it will be 100 years since the birth of El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, better known as Malcolm X. The A train, when it goes down Fulton Street, it stops at Utica Avenue. Utica Avenue is also Malcolm X Boulevard. When you come out the subway, you can go one way down Malcolm X Boulevard, or you can go the other way down Utica Avenue. The community would like for the station to reflect that fact. Reed Avenue was changed to Malcolm X Boulevard 40 years ago. State Senator Zelmore, State Senator Jabari Brisport, Assemblywoman Stephanie Zinneman, the community board unanimously voted that the change should be made. Again, May 19th is Malcolm X's 100th birthday. To honor that great worldwide leader, we are simply requesting that the MTA facilitate the adding of Malcolm X Boulevard to the station's name. It's a simple request. All we want is Malcolm X Boulevard wherever Utica Avenue is written, at the train station that is outside Boys and Girls High School in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. The community supports this overwhelmingly. We went into the subway station, we got petitions, we went to the community board, we spoke to elected officials. No one is against the idea. So that is my request. I see I have a minute and 20 seconds still left, but that's the gist of it. We want Malcolm X Boulevard to be reflected because all you have to do is like a T. Fulton Street is the long part, Utica is on one side, Malcolm X Boulevard is on the other. And his name should be there, especially in this 100th anniversary of his birth, which is May 19th. That's slightly less than 2 months from now. That's not a lot of time for a major statewide, region-wide agency like this to change the signage. So I'll end with 40 seconds left, but that's my request to the MTA to respect the legacy of Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, and to respect the desires of the Bedford-Stuyvesant community. Thank you.
The next speaker is David Paul Gerber.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I was at the MTA Capital Projects hearing, Capital Construction Development Committee meeting. It said Norwood Avenue as one of the new 13 identified stations for ADA access. No, it's not Norwood Avenue. It's Norwood 205th Street, and the B train does not stop there. It ends at Bedford Park. So here's a map here of the new stations here with Norwood Avenue there. Here's the actual correct name, Norwood 205th Street, the service alert. Here's a press release about the 3 buildings saved, and also mentions Norwood Avenue incorrectly. Here's station accessibility projects, also on your MTA website. And with the MTA website, it's embarrassing too, to show that Norwood Avenue, instead of 205th Street, is Norwood 205th Street is on there. And going to elevator and escalator status here, some of the travel alternatives here have other elevators which are non-service. If you look into this, and it's embarrassing, go into the elevator and escalator status, look up the ones at capital replacement, and look at travel alternatives. And finally, about fare evasion itself. You know, this is Bowling Green. This is what you guys should be more to have the tenacity to do the same with your cars that you catch at the bridges due to toll evasion. This is fare evasion on the subway. And this is what the bus operators have been saying here at this meeting about how they disrespected. This is a level of disrespect here when nobody wants to pay the fare here. As you can see here, they go on one bus route here. They all go on without paying here. They just
Thank you
go
for your
right
comment.
in without paying.
Thank you for your comment. Chair Lieber, we have reached our allotted time for this public comment session. At this time, we ask remaining registered speakers to stand by as we transition to a separate live recording. If you are a remote public speaker participating on Zoom, please stand by and wait for further instructions from the moderator. Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Your maiden voyage as the moderator, well done. Thank you to everybody who's joined us for this March meeting of the MTA Board, and thank you especially to our public speakers who are an important part of this board's work. It has been another busy month for all of us. There have been great improvements on the operating front, but also some challenges from our partners in Washington. We'll get to that in a minute, but first I want to acknowledge that as of this month, it has now been 5 years since the pandemic first rocked New York City. The MTA lost 177 employees between 2020 and 2022, and most of those folks succumbed to COVID. We will never forget their sacrifice, and we also honor the work that continues of the brave workforce who labors for the MTA still today. New York has had such a great comeback from the pandemic, but remember, that wasn't guaranteed. We had to fight to keep transit service running for essential workers, the folks who had to get to the hospitals and the pharmacies and the grocery stores and the distribution centers, even when we had just 10% of our normal ridership. We couldn't have run that kind of service without the determination and the commitment of our 70,000 MTA employees. And you know what? We and New York prevailed. We kept going during COVID. We kept the city going. And then when all the transit agencies around the country were saying, oh, we're out of cash, no one's riding, we're cutting service, we didn't just keep service, we increased it. 5 years later, that decision has proved to be a wise one. Transit in New York is in good shape. We have come a long, long way. Buses. We heard this week about the buses getting faster, 4% faster across the city, not only in the congestion relief zone, but citywide due to automated camera enforcement, which is gradually spreading throughout the city. We're actually getting such great speed improvements in the congestion relief zone with our buses that we're now piloting, we're experimenting with removing scheduled time points so that the buses just move as quickly as the traffic and actually the ridership stops as quickly as they permit. The results are positive. Riders are saving minutes in travel time, and there's a heck of a lot less bus bunching because delays are what create that problem. Big gains on the M42, the M50, and the Q32, which goes from Queens to Manhattan and back again. And on the subways, weekend on-time performance beat our goal, 84%, again in February, and weekday OTP, although a little below, has beaten February of last year. We are continuing to make progress. The Rockaway rehab project, Jamie talked about it on Monday, is a stunning success in terms of operating that alternative service. Demetrius gave an update, as well as Jamie. The replacement shuttle on the Rockaway Peninsula is running at 99% on-time performance. And they just, in a complicated operation, took all the cars that had been on the peninsula all over the bridge. They temporarily lashed the bridge to take the cars all back to the shop to get inspected and maintained, and brought in a new fleet. So that has been an amazing success, and we're getting high marks from Rockaway residents and elected officials as well. Not so fast. We've got Rob's doing a great job with a Long Island Railroad service and weekend ridership. is pushing 100% of pre-COVID levels. I think it's at 99. That's an amazing accomplishment. And Justin and team at Metro North are implementing new schedules that'll improve run times on multiple daily New Haven trains, while also adding stops at Marble Hill and Yankee Stadium just in time for opening day. These are the things that get lost in our incredibly controversy-focused news cycle, but they are real proof points that this MTA, the new MTA, is becoming a really well-tuned machine, more businesslike and ready to deliver no matter the challenges. Lately, we're focused on the future and the transition to contactless fare payment. I announced last week that it's time for MetroCard sales to end by the end of this year. I know that some people are having a hard time letting go. My son said to me, "You can't get rid of the MetroCard. It's iconic." He's right, but nostalgia is not a business model. And people said the same thing about the token. And just think of how the move from the token to MetroCard led to a surge in mass transit usage and to a surge in people getting a better deal because they could automatically get a transfer. And we're going to do even more with the advantages of Omni, because the new system will allow us to serve more customers. Look at the growth we've had just in student Omni alone. And it opens the door to new discounts while also helping us to fight fare evasion, because for the first time we'll be able to do a universal proof of payment system like you have in Europe. That is where we're headed. And best of all, it's not only going to save the MTA money, because we don't have to, collect all the cash from MetroCard vending machines, which are breaking down and constantly in need of maintenance, but it's going to deliver savings for riders. A hot button for me has been that a person with low income in the MetroCard system has to walk up at the beginning of the week maybe and figure out, do I have enough money in my pocket for $34 for a weekly or $100+ for a monthly? We prefer a system that delivers the discounts automatically, that person doesn't have to come out of pocket in order to get the best price. And it also means that you don't have to be a math whiz to stand there and figure out, well, how many times am I going to ride the train? Oh, I'm not commuting on Tuesdays, and all that math to figure out, do you want a pass? Again, the system will figure it out for you and give you the best price. It's not great for the MTA financially in one way, because every month we make, every year, Jay, we make $40 million from people buying monthlies and weeklies who don't fully utilize the benefit. But the key is, let's give the customers the best deal. In the long run, that's going to benefit us and everybody. Another example of MTA's new high-functioning modus operandi is the 2025 to 29 capital plan. This is a fact-based proposal. And if fully funded, it's going to modernize our system, which I remind people all the time has been valued at $1.5 trillion. That is the replacement value of the subway system, $1.5 trillion. And so we have to invest in it. You don't get to keep an asset of that complexity and scale and old age without investing in it. So you got to keep it going, but you also want to invest in it so we don't go back to the summer of hell, because when you let things break down, that is what you get. If you're a regular viewer of these board meetings, if you're not a regular viewer, here's what you need to know. We've spent years completing that incredibly comprehensive review of MTA assets, 6 million components and assets, looked at, evaluated for their condition, how long they're going to last, what would be the impact on service if we do or don't replace them. And we turned that analysis into a detailed 20-year needs assessment. You see the cover on the screen. And that became the foundation for what's on the right, the new 5-year, $68 billion capital program that is on the table in Albany right now. Now, at Monday's Capital Program Committee meeting, we talked about how this is the program that's going to finally allow the MTA to get ahead of the delay curve, that we start fixing stuff more quickly than these key components are wearing out and breaking down. We want to get ahead of that process so there are fewer broken power systems. There is less structure that's falling apart that you have to take out of service than there was at the beginning of this capital program. That is why we have identified expenditures in each different category the way we have. And third parties ranging from JP Morgan Chase, who looked at our whole program and compared it to utilities or freight railroads and said, you're investing in the ballpark of the right amount of money, maybe a little low, but they said they took note of the scale. But also the controller of the state of New York, not usually quick to check the box for more spending. The controller of the state of New York, Tom DiNapoli, also validated our capital program proposal. So we're waiting for Albany to act, but there's a lot of support for what we've put on the table. I was up in Albany yesterday to meet with lawmakers, the Speaker, Carl Hastie, Majority Leader Andrew Stewart Cousins, some of the committee chairs, and of course, Governor Hochul. But the transit advocates were also out there in full force, as you can see from the photo on the screen. Everybody I spoke to agrees that the capital plan needs to be fully funded. Legislative leaders reconfirmed what they'd said before, which that the veto action they took on Christmas Eve was about their concern about what would be the right funding sources, not about the substance of what we proposed. So I came away feeling optimistic, but I'm always realistic that these deals get done in the middle of the night, and we got to make sure that we get the right numbers and that the program is, in the end, fully funded. Now, some of folks on this board asked over the last few days, why, if we're optimistic and we're expecting action imminently, why don't we just reapprove the $68 billion program so it's ready to go? Because we do have projects lined up that we want to hit the go button on. We're not going to be voting on it today out of deference to what's going on in Albany, but we are going to recirculate the latest version so everybody has an opportunity to re-inspect what's coming and, if necessary, to comment on it for the moment when the time comes. There are a few new details that we talked about on Monday, including a $400 million increase in the portion of the program that's going to be built using our in-house forces. This is important. We are getting better and better at making sure we do every project in the most efficient way in terms of the delivery mechanism. Sometimes it's design build. That's been great for us. Sometimes it's what we call A plus B procurement, which is a more traditional, fully designed procurement, but with injecting schedule as a variable in the contract, in the procurement selection process. But a lot of the time, the best way to do things is to use our own forces who are right on hand and ready to do the work, and we don't have to do a procurement, and they can do it more cheaply. So we have come to an agreement with the union that allows us to really specify how much of this is going to be done using in-house forces. Maybe it'll be more. And we've also named 12 new ADA stations that have been selected to be included in the program through a collaborative process with many of our stakeholders. Once Albany delivers the budget, we're going to probably ask for a special meeting for the board to vote on the new capital program so we can hit the ground running. And as I said before, and as Jamie said, there are projects literally at the starting gate, so we're going to want to move fast. I have, again, gone on too fast. Wrong. Okay. Well, we are taking listen, there's a lot of rhetoric flying around right now, and I just want to say we're going to be taking a very professional, fact-based approach in how to deal with what's coming out of Washington. Everybody has heard that the Secretary of Transportation wrote us a strongly worded letter about transit safety. He also extended the deadline at the same time for us to, turn off congestion pricing. That won't happen, but that happened in the same communication. And he added a few colorful comments and some threats. We're going to respond, and Chief Kemper and others are going to give us a little taste of some of those facts. But I just want to say we're going to stay cool-headed because the facts are on our side. Remember how we got here. The feds wanted us to do a detailed environmental assessment in order to get the approval. We spent 4 years doing it. It took 4,000 pages of writing to capture what we'd done, and we got the approval. Then people all over started suing us, saying you didn't do it right, and we've won in every court again and again and again. And in the 10 weeks since congestion pricing has been implemented, everything is playing out exactly as projected, including the revenue. How often does the government initiate a policy which immediately has benefits to the public that they experience, immediately causes public polling, public opinion to shift dramatically, and shows that we can actually get big stuff done? That's what we did, and it's pretty special, and I'm very proud of this organization. Some of the things have turned out even better than projected. For example, we now know that one of the concerns that was talked about by opponents of the project, also recognized in our environmental assessment, has not come to pass. And that's additional traffic on roads that are around the central business district, like the Cross Bronx Expressway or the Staten Island Expressway. According to a release put out by the League of Conservation Voters this week, there has not been more truck traffic on the Cross Bronx or on Staten Island as a result of congestion pricing, and that is an unexpected positive as well. Let's talk about the U.S. DOT's letter on transit safety. In a moment, you're going to hear from Chief Kemper and perhaps others about some of those issues. But I want to emphasize, we're not out to make any enemies. We're literally in the bridges business. This MTA looks forward. When the dust settles, we're going to have to work with Washington on fact-based solutions to the challenges we face. And just to remind all of us, we did this during COVID. During the first Trump administration, many Republicans were on board and part of our 2020 campaign to save transit, both for New York but also nationally. And it included the then head of the state GOP and many of our Republican statewide elected officials. I don't have any problem reaching across the aisle when it is good for New Yorkers and good for transit, because historically transportation in the country has been one area that always remained bipartisan. And New York Republicans have historically stuck up for transit in Congress. Al D'Amato became the chair of the committee that gave out transit money because he cared about transit for New York State and New York City. Transit is too important a topic to be subject to polarization or posturing. Our system makes possible 10% of the United States economy. It's the wrong place for arguments that are based on cartoons about New York City from 40 years ago, and that's a little of what I think we're experiencing right now. I grew up in New York in the 1970s and 1980s, and I can tell you we've come a long way, especially on crime. And we're going to be clear about how far we've come, because the NYPD, who is responsible for patrolling the subways, and I keep saying when they attack the MTA for subway crime, they're really banging on the NYPD, who is doing a great job, especially under this commissioner. And they come to our meetings here every month because they're giving us all the data, and they know that they are our responsible partner. And we heard from them this month again. Crime is down 20% this year versus last year, year to date, and 40% versus January, February of 2020, right before the pandemic. I am the first to say that we have a way to go before riders are truly as safe as they ought to be and feel as safe as they ought to be. But the stats don't lie. Progress has been made, especially because of the investments that Governor Hochul has made to put cops, to make sure that the NYPD can put cops on trains overnight and otherwise increase the force levels in the system. There are unique challenges, new challenges. I am concerned that felony assaults are up despite overall lower crime. But that is partly a result, understand this, it's partly a result of the increased enforcement that's taking place. If you look at the felony assault stats, and we look at them every day, right, Chief? What's happening to a great extent is the arrests are 100% up, especially people being stopped for fare evasion, honestly. And some of those people who apparently got used to the idea that fare evasion was a God-given right, then haul off and actually hit cops, which is shocking to me, but we see it every day, and it is a big piece of the stats. We have to make sure that people understand there are consequences for fare evasion, and we are working successfully to push back on fare evasion. That will be part of our presentation to Secretary Duffy. We also need to deal with the mental health issues that are sometimes the root cause of these behaviors, random violence. And this is on the table in Albany right now, we do need to deal with the penal laws, whether it's discovery or the issue of recidivism and how is it dealt with in the criminal justice system, that is one of the issues that we're facing with felony assaults and repetitive subway crime. I am convinced that we're going to succeed. There is a growing sense that the criminal justice laws that may have been passed 5, 6, 7 years ago, some of them need to be adjusted. But our job is going to remain to focus on real fact-based solutions and not to be drawn into a political test of wills or rhetoric, which is what sometimes our friends in the press like a good show and try to play around with. I am optimistic, but with that, let me turn it over to John McCarthy, and who will lead us into some talk about how we're going to respond to Secretary Duffy. John.
Thank you, Chair. I'm playing the Bob Shepard role here and just doing introductions, really, but anybody got that? So good morning. As the Chair said, last week we received a letter from Transportation Secretary Duffy asking for more information about safety and security in the New York City, the New York public transit system. Frankly, we're thrilled the federal government is interested in our public safety efforts. As this board knows very well, we've made significant progress on this front. But any conversation with the federal government needs to also include a discussion of why we in New York receive 17% of all federal formula funding despite carrying 43% of the nation's transit ridership. This funding disparity is shortchanging low and middle income New Yorkers who rely on mass transit, and this needs to be fixed. So today you will hear from Chief of Security Michael Kemper, New York City Transit President Demetrius Critchlow, and co-CFO Jay Patel on our current public safety statistics and initiatives and how we are investing dollars in public safety. But first, as the chair pointed out, we need to level set with everyone. I want to be clear about who patrols the subway system. The New York City Police Department has jurisdiction over law enforcement in the subway system. As someone who worked at the NYPD for a number of years under then Commissioner Raymond Kelly, I know this well. Having worked for Ray Kelly, I also know that the federal government knows this very well. I also know that when it comes to the NYPD and when it comes to patrolling mass transit, they are the best of the best. They're regularly looked at as for best practices from worldwide transit systems like London and Paris and others. So we think there's no better police department to do this critical work. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Chief Kemper, who will report on the safety and security items.
Thank you, John, and Chairman Lieber, good morning. Good morning to all. Let me just quickly introduce myself, a little about my background. I joined the NYPD back in 1991 when I was 20 years old. And throughout my 33-and-a-half-year career, I rose through the ranks and I've served in patrol assignments, detective bureau assignments. I've held executive leadership roles where I commanded patrol precincts, detective bureaus, entire patrol bureaus. And I recently retired just less than 6 months ago as the NYPD's 3-star Chief of Transit. When I was sworn in April of 1991, New York City was far different from where we are today when it comes to crime. There were literally thousands upon thousands of annual felonies reported in the New York City subway system each year. It was back then, a little history lesson. It was back then that the MTA, New York City Transit, had its own police department. They were called the Transit Police. And this all changed with what's known to many as the merge back in 1995 when the NYPD took the policing responsibility of the subway system from the then Transit Police. And that's when a new bureau was created in the NYPD, the Transit Bureau, which is still in place today. It was during this time, the Giuliani administration, that policing as we know it, it was revolutionized, in large part under Commissioner Bratton's leadership and with the advent and implementation of CompStat, a process I'm all too familiar with and a process that's still in place today. And it's a process that's so respected and effective that it expanded nationwide and worldwide. It was also during this period, the mid-1990s, that the NYPD began recording crime stats in the subway system. Significant crime stats began to be accomplished, and the city was rightfully celebrating these accomplishments. Homicides were reaching historic lows, and other felonies, such as robbery and auto theft, were on a decline. So let's compare that era to where we are today. When looking at historic subway crime data and when focusing on 1997, it was then that the NYPD recorded a total of 6,218 major felonies in the subway system, equating to an average of 17 major felonies per day. To put that into context, and when comparing 1997 versus now, where there were 2,213 crimes recorded in 2024, that's over 4,000 less felonies reported in 2024 versus 1997, which represents a 64% reduction. The daily average crime rate in 2024 in the subway system was 6. That's versus 17 in 1997. If you exclude the COVID years, 2020 and 2021, when ridership was way down and the system was virtually shut down, and when looking at 2024 is the lowest, there were the lowest number of felonies recorded in the subway system in 15 years, and amongst the lowest in the last 30 years. Let's see how we stack up compared to other major metropolitan areas in the United States. New York City remains one of the safest, largest U.S. cities, comparable to places like Columbus, Ohio, and West Palm Beach, Florida, and well below cities like Memphis, Houston, Washington, D.C., and Dallas. In fact, and very important to note, less than 2% of all overall crime recorded in New York City occurs in the subway system, less than 2%. Look, I could speak firsthand and with confidence, having spent 33 years as a New York City cop. The NYPD are committed to providing public safety in the subway system, as is the MTA. Our governor, our chairman, John Oliba, and this administration have been clear from day one. Public safety is their top priority. This holds true and will continue to hold true. Our riders must be safe, and they must feel safe. This I can say, and I'm going a little off script here, and this is so true. There's not a day that goes by where the Chairman Leavitt, doesn't grab me to ask me about safety and crime and offering any sort of assistance he can to make improvements. And make no mistake, the NYPD is the premier law enforcement agency in the world. The NYPD wrote the book on policing, and under Commissioner Tischer's leadership, they continue to write that book. The men and women of the NYPD are second to none. There is nothing they can't accomplish. And the current subway crime data, although not perfect, not where we want it to be, is promising and encouraging. Certainly not where we were a few years ago. Crime in the subway system is trending downward. There's no question that even with all our effort, high-profile, unfortunate, and shocking crimes occur in our system. We can all agree one crime is one crime too many, and one stubborn crime we are particularly focused on is felony assault. The number of felony assaults has dramatically risen over the years, up 55% versus 2019. And so has the number of felony assault arrests, up dramatically in 2024 versus 2019, with 476 arrests for felony assault in 2024 versus 270 in 2019. Contributing to the rise in felony assaults is the disturbing and unacceptable dramatic increase in the number of NYPD cops being assaulted, all while proactively patrolling the subway system, focusing on and enforcing fare evasion, quality of life offenses, amongst other offenses. Comparing 2019 versus 2024, we've seen a 152% increase in the number of cops assaulted in our system. Again, simply unacceptable. And this is directly connected to, as I mentioned, increased enforcement, like when people are arrested. And transit arrests are up 160% in just the last 2 years. Listen to these facts. In 2019, 71 cops were assaulted in the subway system. 71 too many. In 2024, 179 cops were assaulted. 108 more cops assaulted in 24 versus 2019. And when looking at the total number of assaults reported in 2024, assaults on cops represents 31% of all recorded assaults in the system. The safety of our transit workers is top of mind and critically important. Over the years, the MTA has pushed hard and has advocated for law changes to protect our workers. As recent as 2022, changes to New York state laws have been enacted, now making it a felony to physically assault a transit worker. This is good news, and these are changes that we fully support. Luckily, we've seen a recent downward trend in the number of transit workers assaulted, but in 2024, assaults against transit workers represented 7% of all felony assaults recorded in the system. Far too high and way too unacceptable. To this, the MTA is advocating to protect transit workers under this law. Recidivist offenders. Where do I even start with this? A major problem that needs correction. In 2023, when I was the chief of transit for the NYPD, I reported that there were 38 people arrested for assaulting MTA workers in the subway system. Those 38 people have a lifetime total of 1,126 prior arrests. Imagine? Also, in 2023, when I was the chief of transit, I reported that of the over 13,000 arrests made in the system for that year, 124 people were identified as being arrested 5 or more times that same year alone. We looked at those 124 people, and they have a lifetime total of over 7,500 arrests. Imagine. Criminal recidivists are emboldened by the lack of consequences attached to the criminal justice reforms and our fractured criminal justice system. The first step to correcting this is ensuring individuals who assault others and commit crimes against others, including our riders, our employees, and our cops, is to ensure accountability and consequences. For without consequences, where is the deterrence? And where is the deterrence for our crime victims? Where is the justice for our crime victims? I apologize. Who's advocating for our victims? Again, the MTA is. The NYPD is. That I can say with certainty. As I've said, one crime is one crime too many. We will continue to advocate and work with our local and state partners to get this right. Next, I'll highlight some of what we've done already with the support from the state and city to increase security in the subway system. In July 2024, Chairman Lieber hired the MTA's first ever criminal justice advocate, Katie Falaska, a former prosecutor and former NYPD employee. Katie's job, in large part, is to advocate on behalf of crime victims, customers, MTA employees, cops. She works alongside our partners in law enforcement, prosecutorial agencies, and community-based organizations to ensure cases are prosecuted and offenders are held accountable to the highest extent of the law. She's been tracking several cases as they make their way through the justice system, and she will continue to advocate for our riders and transit workers. Thanks to the strong support and investment from Governor Hochul and the challenge by Chairman Lieber to outfit all subway cars with video cameras, MTA employees worked extremely hard to accomplish this. And in the last quarter of 2024, installation of approximately 15,000 cameras concluded, with all 6,000 plus subway cars now having video inside them. These cameras supplement the 10,000 plus cameras already watching over the rest of the system, mezzanines, platforms, turnstile areas, etc. These on-train cameras are a game changer in so many ways. They work as a deterrent to those thinking of committing a crime in the system, and they are a great investigative resource for investigators, detectives, if a crime were to occur. These cameras have already proven to be successful on countless occasions. If you commit a crime in the subway system, whether on board a train or not, the odds of it being captured on video is great, and you will be identified, apprehended, and arrested. That's our message. It's that simple. Again, thanks to Governor Hochul's steadfast commitment and investments to making the subway system safer for our riders, and thanks to the NYPD, particularly Commissioner Tisch, and her vision and commitment, NYPD officers are now patrolling every subway car between the hours of 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. to help keep New Yorkers and our riders safe while they travel overnight. This deployment is a supplement to the hundreds of other NYPD officers who patrol our subway system each and every day, on trains and in stations, in uniform and in plain clothes. We've often said that the subway system is not a homeless shelter and it's not a psych ward. Our system is a mode of transportation to allow people from getting to point A to point B safely. And to that, we're getting help for our most vulnerable New Yorkers in the system who seek and need shelter. No one should be reduced to living in the subway system, as there are far better options. It's unfair to them. It's inhumane in so many ways, and it's unfair to our customers. Governor Hochul has invested $20 million to expand the subway co-response teams, or SCOUT, as they are often referred to. This program pairs nurses and clinicians from the New York City Department of Homeless Services and MTA police officers to transport people with severe mental illness to hospitals to get the treatment they need. Since late 2023, This program has helped almost 500 individuals access necessary medical and/or psychiatric care. Currently, 5 scout teams operate during the weekday and 2 operate during overnight hours. 5 more scout teams will be deployed in the next quarter. Fare evasion. Fare evasion costs the MTA hundreds of millions of dollars in lost revenue and adds to the perception of lawlessness in our subway system. Not to mention, it's very unfair to our paying riders. The tone of law and order of our system begins at the turnstile. The NYPD is enforcing fare evasion in the subway system with the number of fare evasion enforcement contacts, arrests, and summonses up dramatically versus prior years. And we acknowledge this at the MTA, and we thank them for their effort. Arrests and summonses have increased 1.5 times since 2022, and the NYPD are making 5 times more arrests for fare evasion today versus just 2 years ago. The focus on fare evasion will continue. With the efforts I just detailed, and that's just some, amongst many others, the crime data for the beginning of 2025 is promising. As of March 16th, overall major crime in the subway system is down 21.7% versus last year, including significant reduction in robberies and a decrease in that stubborn crime of felony assault. When looking at the first 2 months of 2025, combining January and February, overall major crime is at its lowest number in recorded history, barring COVID year 2021, with a daily average of 4.4 index crimes per day. That's in the nation's largest subway system that serves upward of 4 million riders a day. Like I mentioned before, one crime is one crime too many. That is so true. And we clearly recognize that there's a lot of work to get done to be where we want to be. Our work is far from finished, but the current crime data, accomplished by the NYPD and its Transit Bureau, led by Chief Galata, along with the partnership of the MTA, is encouraging. Again, I want to make this clear. We are committed to providing public safety for our riders and employees, and we will do everything we can to accomplish this. I will now hand it over to New York City Transit President Demetrius Critchlow, who will talk about our efforts to combat fare evasion.
Thank you, Chief. As the Chief just mentioned, I'll be taking a little minute to just talk about our efforts to fight fare evasion. This has been an ongoing fight since Chair Liebert took the helm. The effort started when he first commissioned the Blue Ribbon Panel to do a full review of the issue. There was no slight in recognizing that a problem existed, and he took swift effort to start the efforts to address it. We fought this on many fronts, from affordability to process to training to infrastructure changes. But back in 2018, then District Attorney stopped prosecuting most of the cases of fare evasion in Manhattan. Other district attorneys followed suit. This set us back. I mean, there's no question that is a huge step in the wrong direction. But despite this setback, we would not sit back and rest on our laurels. We've taken action with support from state and local partners. Today, more New Yorkers than ever are eligible for half-price rides, thanks to the investments of the city that now expands the eligibility threshold to 145% of the federal poverty line. Nearly 366,000 New Yorkers have signed up for fair fares. We rolled out our new student Omni cards this year, allowing students to tap up to 4 times to get to and from school and to reach other after-school activities, even during the summer. We regularly call the subway emergency exit the superhighway of fare evasion. We made huge efforts to stop that. Gate guards at subway emergency exits prevent a stream of customers from getting a free ride just because the gate is open. In-house projects to eliminate backcocking, where 80% of the system is now done. New features on the subway turnstiles like fins and sleeves make it harder to jump and evade the fare. Delayed egress is rolled out at 7 locations with more to come. On buses, Eagle teams are making huge strides to make sure that people pay their fares. With the support of NYPD officers, they're educating riders. First is educating, and then taking action about fare payment and issuing summonses. There's no question these efforts are working. Subway and bus fare evasion is declining. Both subways and bus fare evasion peaked in the spring of 2024 at 14% for subways and 50% for bus. Now, subway fare evasion is down to 10%, and bus fare evasion is down to 45%. Moving forward, we're investing in the fare gates of the future that not only make it harder to evade the fare, but also improve accessibility for people with limited mobility, people with strollers, and travelers with luggage. In the 2025 to 2029 plan, we're scheduled to invest over $1 billion in new fare gates. The first 20 of these fare gates are expected to be in the stations this year. I'm now going to hand it over to co-CFO Jay Patel to talk a little bit about funding.
Thanks, Demetrius. When talking about federal funding for public transportation, it's important to note that while the MTA is moving 43% of the nation's transit ridership, we receive just 17% of all federal funding formula allocation. So we already rely on a relatively small amount of federal assistance to keep the system moving. There's also been declining federal support for transit security from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. It's gone down 75% since 2008 nationally. Even with limited resources, the MTA allocated $513 million of our own budget to safety and security initiatives. That's 35 times more than the minimum federal spending requirements of its safety and security grants. These initiatives are wide-ranging and include the items that you see on the slide. What's important is that this level of investment will continue forward, even as federal support declines. Now I'll kick it back to John to wrap us up.
Sure. Thanks, Jay. Just two quick housekeeping things. First, we will be responding in writing to the federal government. I believe it's to the FTA Region 2 administrator. But I just want to point out that you heard a lot of data and a lot of data points today. So much of this is available online. We really are very proud of the amount of data that we're publishing. In fact, when the secretary put through his letter, there were commentators that said, you don't even have to ask the MTA for this. It's out there. You can pick it up and write the report yourself. But that report in writing will be sent forward in short order. And then lastly, I just, the chair mentioned being a bridge. In being in the bridge business, we're going to take that very seriously and work with the federal government. We feel there's a lot of areas where there's opportunity for progress. Just a couple of quick things. As Jay was pointing out, prioritizing formula funds, we really think that's going to lower a lot of costs. A lot of stuff gets caught up in the federal bureaucracy. Streamlining that, money becoming more predictable, allows us to plan better. We think that's a great idea. There's a lot of outstanding waiver requests that we need to move along, so getting that help will be huge. A big issue for us is rolling stock, supporting American rolling stock. That would be a huge lift, and we would really appreciate, and we look forward to working with the feds on that. And then duplicative reporting requirements. This is everywhere. It's like there's a ton of that in the federal government. So we're going to identify those, and hopefully they're going to want to work with us and streamline that. So with that, the group is happy to take any questions, Chair.
You and Chief Kemper and President Critchlow and co-CFO Jay Patel. I mean, this is again, we're going to take this approach, fact-based. If people want to know about what we're doing on subway safety, we're going to give them the facts. You saw a lot of that today. And I just want to tip my hat to, we happen to have somebody who, retired from the MTA, from the NYPD as the head of transit. And talk about building bridges. We got very close when he was in that role over at NYPD, and I'm so glad that Michael Kemper, just an incredibly distinguished law enforcement professional, has come to be Chief of Security for the MTA. That collaboration with the NYPD has never been stronger. So with that, let me invite the board to comment or ask questions. Mr. Herbst, I know, has a comment. Mr. Zuckerman, Mr. Chu, Ms. Mahaltzis. Mr. Herbst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first of all want to compliment everyone with this report. You have brought comfort to a lot of the riders. You've addressed a very serious issue, and I appreciate all the facts that you've given. I think this should be fact-driven. But some of the comments that were made just raised some questions that really bothered me. One, Chief, you mentioned the recidivism. I find that totally unacceptable, and the department, NYPD, and your staff has done a great job, but the frustration is there, and how do we deal with that? And my question is, changes in laws must be applied. Have we made any recommendations to Albany or the city, and where do we stand? Did the MTA officially put in a request to make changes in the penal code, for a sense? I don't know if someone has an answer for that. And another question.
I'll start off, and it is frustrating, and it should frustrate. And I offered that data for a reason. It's factual, and people should hear that. So when they hear us at the MTA, or they heard me at the NYPD speaking about repeat offenders and recidivism, and asking the question, like, how is that advancing public safety? Like, what is that doing? It's not. People could see or hear firsthand on what I'm talking about. Here's the good news. The good news is these conversations have become very public. They've created a lot of conversation at the highest levels of New York State government. There are conversations, I can't speak for those conversations in my role, but there are conversations to correct, if you will, or modify some of these reforms. So hopefully in the near future there are corrections to this, in my professional opinion. If these corrections are done right, and now's a great opportunity to do them. If they are done right, we're going to be seeing a crime reduction, but more importantly, like I mentioned in my statement, our victims will see the justice, of the crimes perpetrated on them.
Mr. McCarthy.
And I'll just add to that. Two things. We were up in Albany last week. The criminal justice advocate, Katie Falaska, who's here with us, we took a trip up there to talk to the Assembly, the Senate, and others. The governor has in her budget legislation that one fix is what we're calling the aggravated transit offender. This is someone who's going back again and again committing crimes in transit. This is about identifying a problem, coming up with a solution. That's what we think we've done here. We had very good conversations, so we're hopeful. This would advanced penalty, increased penalties for someone who's doing it. Secondly, you know, the work that's going on in Albany right now on discovery reform, we think that will help. It's a real fix. We think that will help with cases that currently are just being disposed of just because of technicalities. So there's progress there, and that really does go to the felony assault issue.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I can continue, a question regarding the fare evasion. There's been great progress with the bridges, the tunnels. We heard today about the transit with the subways. I know the rail system has made improvements. We heard at the last meeting, I believe. My concern is with the buses. And I'm curious if you've looked at some of the other transit systems throughout the nation. How do they address similar situations? I mean, we should be the model for others, but if somebody's doing it better, have we looked, and how are they addressing their concerns?
So I actually went to a CEO meeting for agency presidents and heads of agencies this past weekend, and this was one of the prime topics for discussion. I was on the panel along with the head of WMATA, and you know, I would say that we are unlike them in that we have not given up. You know, we have accepted the challenge of trying to push back on fare evasion, where other systems have taken the approach that they have lost this battle. So I would say that what we're doing, and one thing that they have that we do not have, is their own police force. The resources that we've used with in-house forces and then partnering with NYPD, none of them are doing that. It's unique. And the fact that we've had the progress that we've had on the bus system, a 9% reduction in fare evasion on buses, is like a huge mark that we've made just within a short period of time. So, and you know, the chairman has been extremely supportive of all these efforts, new ways of how we do the things, deployment of our Eagle teams. I'm really excited about what we can do in the future too, as we start to expand the use of our resources.
But let me just be clear. The bus system is the hardest part, right? I mean, we can do physical barriers on the subway system to a degree we have not yet been able to do or conceived anywhere on the bus system. But I went out with Demetrius and his team to a couple of locations in the Bronx where they were doing fare evasion enforcement operations where there are plainclothes officers who get on the bus at a certain stop, and then a couple stops down the line, they're met by NYPD and MTA they're Eagle Team professionals, but they're unarmed, and everybody who's fare evade is taken off the bus and given a summons. And the proof so far has been, if you do that on a reasonable cycle, you can actually create much more of a culture of fare compliance. And we're working that. And we're not only doing it in places in the Bronx, and I want to tip of the hat to Mr. Jones, who's been adamant about making sure that this was done in an even-handed way. We're doing it on the 79th Street crosstown that I grew up taking in Manhattan, in a more affluent neighborhood, because there are some people who are taking advantage of the fact that we have some, you know, SBS, including some rear door boarding, and taking advantage of that. So we are engaged in a big effort. Now, the challenge, of course, is how many NYPD officers are available for this particular mission. And in fairness to them, they're throwing a lot of personnel at the subways and have given us personnel for buses, which is the first time in a long time. But it would be great if the federal government, instead of turning down security funding for mass transit, turned it up. And since 2008, they've been turning it down. New York already gets shortchanged, and they've been cutting the whole pot. So it's really a bad situation. That's why we push our Republicans, folks who are in the majority in Congress, to step up. I know they love to point fingers at us, especially for congestion pricing, but their principal duty is to fight for New York and to make sure. And that's why Governor Hochul and the legislative leaders wrote that letter yesterday. Mr. McCarthy, you're trying to get my attention, I see.
No, I just also wanted to point out, Chair, in your remarks last week at a Crane's breakfast about the retirement to the Transit Museum of MetroCard, that will unlock the potential for proof of payment, which is going to be so much easier in terms of fighting fare evasion on buses and subways.
Be able to get on any bus. No more say, hey, I paid with coin. That the complexity is we now still have coin on bus. When we have all contactless, you just be able to go up to anybody and say, show me your phone. Go up to anybody and say, you know, which credit card did you use? It's all subject to validation with a device.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, but the frustration continues. You can issue summons to every possible fare evader. If they're not going to be prosecuted, we're wasting our time.
Well, you know, we got a couple of DAs who are actually starting to put on the charge sheet theft of services. Now we're hoping that they will actually move forward. I would like to see it started with the people who break the MetroCard machines, hold the gate open, and in effect shake down our passengers for money. That is a version of fare evasion we call fare evasion enablement. People who are turning it into a scam. Let the police, let the criminal justice system start to prosecute those folks who do fare evasion on the wholesale scale rather than just the retail scale. Okay, Mr. Zuckerman, followed by Ms. Sammy Chu, Ms. Mahaltzis, Blanca Lope.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with you earlier in your comments that transit should be a bipartisan or even a nonpartisan topic. And Mark, I agree with what the questions you asked are great fact-based ones, and I thank you for that. I'm honored that not just one but two Republicans in a row in Putnam County have put this Democrat on this board. So it shows that open-minded Republicans can work together, and I really do appreciate that. I will say, however, and I'll mostly focus on the Secretary of Transportation, I get worried about two types of information: disinformation and misinformation. I don't know if people know the difference between the two. Disinformation is being wrong on purpose, and misinformation is being wrong not on purpose, by accident. Well, this morning, the Secretary decided to tweet, quote, "The MTA is running a deficit thanks to New York's financial mismanagement." So the first one's disinformation, because as I think Jay said, you know, we have this thing we put out. This is our budget. Here it is. As I read it, 2023, break even. 2024, break even. 2025, break even. 2026, guess what, break even, no deficits. Would you agree with that, Mr. CFO? Thank you, sir. Okay, so that's disinformation. That's not true, and I don't understand why. The misinformation is to focus on the operating budget when we're obviously talking about the capital budget. Right, that's just basic error. I don't think he meant it intentionally. I think he was looking for something to say, but the reality is we're talking about a capital problem here. I have said many times, and I really appreciate the chair talking about our $1.5 trillion asset. You've heard me say before, we should be spending 1%. That's roughly what you fix your house. You got a $500,000 house, you spend $5,000 a year. We got $1.5 trillion asset, we should be spending $15 billion a year. We've never gotten close to 15. We're finally, with this capital plan, getting in spitting distance of that. And yet, as Jay properly identified, the mismatch between what riders in New York bring and what we get from the federal government is out of whack. We send $44 billion from the state to Washington, and we don't get it back. And as I said on Monday, and I mean this sincerely, I'm not being funny, like I invite the Secretary of Transportation to come to our Finance Committee meeting at noon on April 28th. We can talk about the difference between operating and capital. We can talk about what we need to fund this plan. But the reality is this system runs New York, and New York runs the country. We are 10%, as the chair said, of GDP of the country. We're the 8th largest GDP of a city in the world. If we were a country, we'd be the 8th largest country. We are essential to the nation, and I'd say arguably to the world. And to not fund us properly and to fight about things like false deficits is just missing the point. This is a well-run organization, and I give the chair and his incredible staff over the last several years high marks for their efficiency. I do that as a My day job is to do that for companies in trouble, so I think I speak professionally saying I've observed major changes over the decade I've been here. And if the secretary wants to have a fact-based conversation, I'm ready. I assume my two co-CFOs are ready for that conversation. We welcome him, and as I said, we'll give him not just 2 minutes, maybe even 4 minutes to speak. So thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because we're playing a game of whack-a-mole when it comes to the misinformation. And again, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but the other day there was shock by the secretary that you get charged $9 to come into Manhattan with congestion pricing and $9 to exit. Yeah, obviously not true. Claiming that crime is up 56% when it's down. I don't know, again, if that's intentional or not. And then, questioning why we never did an analysis of how much you need to charge for congestion pricing to work. We did 4,000 pages, and it wasn't like page 3,000. This was like a page 1 thing. This is like why God made executive summaries. So the data is available, so.
All right, back to the board members. Mr. Chu.
I'm going to echo some of Neil's points, but maybe in a more articulate manner. I'm just kidding. Neil, you're very articulate. We all admire you. This agency has gone through so much and reacted to so many conditions over the last years. Even in my short time, I think I'm coming up on 3 years on this board, whether it was the recovery from COVID, and the budget gap that was left by that, the safety, the very unique safety conditions that were created by that. And not one time did I see the staff of this agency or the NYPD wither. Every situation, and I will say, and I could also say that for our fellow board members, all stepped up, did the work, thought through the problem, at not one moment took a position of resignation to the situation. And Neil, you mentioned it. We, at a time where it could have been easy to say that, hey, we have this COVID funding, we're not going to worry about it. Our financial team got ahead of that and said, hey, we're going to have a big problem if we don't address this, because we're just going to fall off a cliff when this COVID money runs out, and did the work to get ahead of that and communicate it to Albany. And Albany, to their credit, and this governor, made sure that we did get to a place where we had flat budgets. We get a lot of coverage for what happens. We should get more coverage for the things that aren't happening. And the truth is, we could be right now in an extreme financial crisis, actually be in an extreme financial crisis, if there hadn't been that thoughtful, process put in place that gave the board time to make a decision, and then gave Albany a time to be a partner with us and make sure that the system kept running. So I've seen this board react to many things, this agency, all the staff react to many things, and we're in a better place now than we were because of it. I want to talk about this capital program. This is a situation where we've had to be very good at being reactive. This capital program is proactive. The decay curve, I'm shocked we haven't heard the decay curve once today. And did you say the decay curve? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was great. I was having a better side conversation with David Jones. The decay curve is this agency making sure that we are being cost effective. There's a lot of talk and conversation about cost effectiveness, about being responsible to funding and managing funding properly. This capital program represents that, because for dollars that we don't spend today, it's going to cost us multitudes down the road. And this is a very big decision point for us collectively as New York to decide how important this transportation system is. Is this just for the riders who swipe or tap? Or is this system in the better condition of this system for the common good? And they've made that decision before. They helped us when we had our budget fallout from COVID. And I'm hopeful and confident they'll make that decision again. Now, in terms of our interaction with Washington and misinformation and, potential partnerships, while we're still getting knocked from outside New York about congestion pricing, people who were telling me I was, we can't have profanity. We have had that made clear, but I could very well use profanity. What people were saying about us when congestion pricing was in the planning phases and before implementation. But I have, to your point, Jan, I've never seen more people convert so quickly to being against something to being for something. And while we're getting criticism from the federal government on it, cities around the country are seeing what we're doing, and there will be more congestion pricing programs in the United States of America because New York did it first. And we will help them do it. And we will continue to innovate best practice, just like we're doing on many things, including safety. So I think it's a time for the federal government to recognize that this agency is equipped and has the moxie to do hard things, not just reactively, but proactively, and innovate. Because what New York has always been is the social laboratory for not just the country, but the world. And I think it's never been a better time to invest. So I'll join the tempered conversation and say, and join the chorus of extending the invitation to the federal government to come work with us and help us continue to lead on all of these things.
Amen. Ms. Mahaltis.
So getting back, Chief, to what you were talking about, can you just explain further about the number of assaults? Was it on police officers and transit workers?
Yeah, so what we did was, you look at the crime. Assault is up. We recognize that. For anyone thinking, as someone that deployed based on data, yeah, felony assault is up. Robberies are down, though. Grand larcenies are down. Other crimes are down, but felony assaults are up. So when you look at the felony assault increase, and it is up dramatically versus years ago. I think it's up 55% this year in 2024 versus 2019. But the point was, when you took a look at the total number of felony assaults in the system in 2024, 31% of them were on cops, and just about 7% were on MTA employees. That's not making an excuse. That's just peeling back and looking at what's driving this increase in felony assaults. And clearly, 108 more felony assaults on cops from one year to another is a driving factor or a contributing factor.
But the point that I was trying to make, which I think is important, is it's directly correlated to the fact we have 100% more fare evasion enforcement. Because when you look at these and you watch these crimes day by day, and we look at it every day, most frequent felony assault in the system is stop for fare evasion, hit the cop. Right. Assault on MOS is the way it's, member of the service is the way it's classified. So that particular scenario has fueled the growth. And the other thing that's fueled the growth is that we have succeeded, something we did, in pushing for Albany to reclassify any attack on a transit worker as a felony. Now, these are things that we've done the right thing, and we want those attacks to be felonies. We just need everyone to understand this is part of where the numbers are coming from.
Right. No, that was my point. Was it that someone was trying to, a police officer trying to stop someone?
The overwhelm, I don't have the
Or a
exact
homeless
number, but
person or
I could say
something like
with confidence, the supermajority, if not all, that's how confident I am in saying this, of cops assaulted are as a result of them taking enforcement action.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Ms. Valdivia, then Ms. Lopez, then Vinny Test.
No, Vinny won. I thought
Vinny.
Vinny was first.
Vinny first? I'm sorry? I'm so sorry.
Vinny
Vinny.
First. So, listen, and I'll be really brief. As somebody who has been very vocal about the assaults on our employees, it's comforting to hear throughout your entire presentation, Chief, the employees listed as a priority. The improvements that have been made has been extraordinary to protect our workforce. So first and foremost, that's an important component. And I'll just say this: we all need to continue to remember that, nowhere in any MTA employee's job description is there any expectation of having to be able to defend yourself or do anything of a law enforcement type action while we collect fares and while we provide information. So I just, as my minutes are numbered on this board, I hope everybody continues to remember the annoyance that I might have given you throughout my career as far as defending our employees and these frontline assaults that we get throughout the system. So if we can continue that path of prioritizing that, and appreciation for what you've done so far.
And I appreciate that, and it is top of mind. And I'm going to be very honest with you, and I'm being very real. Before I was even hired at the MTA, when I was still in the NYPD, the guy sitting up in the front, the chairman, he was relentless with me, and still is when it comes to transit employee assaults. He hired an advocate, a criminal justice advocate, in July, in large part to ensure strong prosecution, to support law enforcement, make sure they know what's needed, offer advice, and cultivating relationships with prosecutors throughout the city. And transit worker assaults is one of those crimes. Every single transit worker assault is separated and prioritized and followed up by Katie, and that's from the strong direction and leadership of the chairman, and that's just the facts.
And we're not going to let Mr. Tessitore pass his last meeting at the end without a little bit of celebration. So, but that's a moment away. Ms. Lopez, then Ms. Valdivia. I know I'm getting order imperfectly, but please go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I appreciate the presentation. Mr. Chair, will we have an opportunity to hear the criminal justice advocate present at some point this year? Yes,
Sure.
I understand.
She's right behind you.
Just to hear about her role and data she could share.
It's a great point. We'll take advantage of having had this discussion to include her at a board meeting to come in the next couple of months. Thank you. Ms. Valdivia.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all those who've worked on this presentation today. Given the timeliness of the issue, I'm sure that took many, many hours, but at the same day, I know you're all living it every day. So listening to this presentation, I feel like I'm in bizarro world, right? So I hear the statistics, and then I hear the language by which our system is described by partners and institutions that the MTA has worked with for decades and has been instrumental to some of the success here for the MTA and the New York City transit system and transit in the nation. So I guess my only note, kind of piggyback off of what Vinny said, is, employees are listening today. Employees read the newspapers, our staff, our workforce, the people who, really, run New York every day are seeing this language being used around our system. And so to all the employees listening, I think we're with you. We're with you. We believe that we run a good system. It is hard, limited resources. We have to serve millions of people a day. I think, Sammy, you noted that, any societal problem that we have across our nation, in a way we see it in our system. We are the public plaza. So, I know public service is never for the faint of heart. I just want to, double down on our commitment to our staff. And from a morale perspective, I think you hear just so many board members are with the staff, believe that the work that you're doing every day is meaningful despite, what some new people in the space say. And so I just want to kind of double down on that and ensure that our staff are feeling supported, protected, and feeling like they are given what they need to do their work. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I may, I looked up, I saw Demetrius, and I apologize, and I didn't leave you out purposefully. The president of New York City Transit, relentless when it comes to employee safety and security, and he's another one that, we're following up, and I'm mandated, and he demands updates on every transit worker assault and the status of those cases. So I didn't want to leave out Demetrius.
Okay. Mayor Joshi.
I just had one quick question on the recidivism stats. Have you looked at recidivism when it comes to assaults on members of service or MTA staff? I'm just curious if there are some outliers there to focus on and work with the DAs on.
Yeah, so as far as, I think I offered the data, and I have it and I know it because I was there in 2013, year end, 38 individuals arrested for assaulting a transit worker in the subway system for the year. Those 38 people have over 1,100 arrests between them lifetime. As far as the recidivism on cops, I don't have the data like that. I'm sure the NYPD either has it or can get it. And it wouldn't shock me if it was far off.
30 arrests a person. It's hard to get there. Anybody else want to be heard? Mr. Albert?
Again, great presentation by everybody. As you all know, I'm sure I ride the subways and buses very frequently, and I'm sorry to say that I cannot take a ride without seeing somebody beat the fare. Whether it's through somebody exiting through the slam gate or just leaping over the turnstiles, backhocking, just any number of ways. And on occasion, I say something to people. I saw a young lady beat the fare, and I said, you know, if everybody did that, you'd see massive service cuts. I don't think you want to see that. And we had a nice discussion. She actually went out and slid her Metro card in. I showed her some great transit apps, and we had a great talk. So
Out of that 290.
I know that. Thank you. But the number that we hear thrown around all the time is in the area of $700 million lost on fare evasion. That's a lot of service we could be providing. And our level of service is what makes our system so great. The additional service that we got this summer, big difference. People are still talking about it. They tell me, wow, the trains are coming much more frequently. We don't want to lose this, and anything we can do to make this better and make, as you recalled, our paying passengers not feel like idiots is something that we need to do. So thanks to everybody who's helping to make this happen.
Thank you. Other folks? Okay. So let's call this portion of the meeting to an end and turn to our more routine business. But first, I do want to comment on one milestone that is here upon us. Someone give us a. There we go. Vinny is one of our longest serving members. He started working at the Long Island Railroad in 1994. He was appointed to this board 18 years ago in 2007. And in addition to longevity, I just want to acknowledge that, you know, long before I was the chair, I figured out that if you wanted honest feedback on how we were doing on a range of issues, but especially on how employees, the experience of the employees and the way we were looking after our employees, training them, you went to Vinny because you got the straight dope. He doesn't have an agenda. He is, he's a wise person to consult on almost any topic. He's obviously fights hard for his members, and that's what he was appointed to the board to do, but just generally brings a quiet wisdom to our proceedings and to the whole board. And I just don't want to let the fact that Vinny's retiring, so we congratulate you. Enjoy whatever is next. You've got a great, I know, would you like to, I'll ask you to introduce your successor who's among us today. But I just want to say to you, we are so grateful for everything you've done, both substantive and the spirit that you brought to the board work. We're going to miss you, but you set a standard that we will all try to live up to. Thank you, Vinny.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow. Not going to make it easy for you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, sit down. I tend to be a crier, so don't stand up. First, I'd like to introduce Christopher Leathers. General Chairman Anthony Simon has nominated him to the governor's office. Christopher Leathers is obviously a smart member, and he is a track supervisor, one of our local chairmen. He brings some transit history. He's well-rounded in our in the crafts in the agency. He's an engineering supervisor, and I know that he will be a great addition to the board. So good luck to Chris. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jano, for the kind words. Thank you to Rob for your leadership and your friendship, which came first over the years, right? Appreciate it, and all the kind words on Monday from my colleagues in committee. It's been an absolute privilege to be on this board representing labor. My proudest thing is to say that I came from the rank and file, doing an entry-level position and grew my way in, and I'm always proud to stand with my workers and my membership and all the labor people on the railroad. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay. From the high points to the more mundane, we'll now go to the routine business of the board. So, Paige is right on me. Is there a quorum, Ms. Graves?
Yes, there is.
And I note that Mr. Mack has been joining us remotely. Thank you for being present. Let's hear from the railroads. Mr. Herbst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Metro North and the Long Island Railroad Committee met jointly on Monday and has no items for board approval.
Thank you for that brief presentation. Ms. Mahaltzis, the New York City Transit Committee.
The New York City Transit Committee met Monday and reports the following, Mr. Chairman. There were 2 items for a total of $11.5 million. The committee discussed these items. However, a quorum of members was not present. Today, the committee presents these items for board approval.
Okay, thank you. I will make the motion to approve those items. Is there a second? Mr. Chu, thank you. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The items are approved.
Thank you. This concludes the New York City Transit Committee report.
Ms. Joshi, the Capital Committee, Program Committee.
Good morning, Chair. The Capital Program Committee met Monday and reports the following. Construction and Development has 5 actions, including 2 competitive procurements and 3 ratifications for a total amount of $251.8 million. The committee discussed these items. However, a quorum of members was not present. The committee presents these items for a board vote today.
There was extensive discussion at the board about the items. I will note, and I think everybody got comfortable with it, but with that, I'll make a motion to approve. May I have a second? Dr. Rizzo, thank you. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? Anything? Okay, the items are approved. Anything else, Ms. Joshi, for Capital?
No, that concludes the Capital Program report.
Ms. Mahaltzis for Bridges and Tunnels.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Monday, I chaired the Bridges and Tunnels Committee, and there were no items for board action.
Thank you. Finance Committee, Mr. Zuckerman.
Thank you, sir. Continuing the trend, we have 1 action which seeks board approval of the all-agency annual procurement report. The committee discussed this item. However, a quorum of members was not present. The committee presents this item for a vote today.
Let us take the message from the goings-on that we all need to attend our committee meetings. Motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Dr. Rizzo, thank you. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item is approved.
There is 1 administrative real estate item, the all-agency real property and personal property disposition guidelines, as well as 2 transactional real estate items for New York City Transit and Metro North. As I said before, we did not have a quorum of members present, so I seek approval of these items today.
Okay, again, I'll make the motion to approve. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Herbst. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The real estate item is approved.
This concludes the Finance Committee meeting until April 28th, when Secretary Duffy will be joining us, apparently.
Okay. Minutes. The minutes of the February meeting were distributed, and is there an item of correction, Mr. Albert?
Yes, there are 3 corrections. It's on the list of public speakers. Alita Dupree's name has 2 E's at the end of it, not 1. Jack Nierenberg has an E after the I, which is missing, and there's an extra E at Kalia Hazlett's name, which does not have an E at the end of it. So with those 3 corrections,
With those corrections, are there any opposition to the approval of the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you, Dr. Rizzo. Second, Ms. Mahaltzis. We are in adjournment. Thank you, everybody. So, in a pretty testy press environment, I thought it was an incredibly important meeting, just to clear the air and to sort of bring us back to fact-based reality. New York City is among the very safest cities in the country. The transit system has made tremendous progress in reducing crime, 20% better than last year, 40% better than the months before COVID. And, comparatively, the transit system, this wasn't mentioned, the transit system using National Transit Database is among the safer systems in the United States. You are 30 times more likely to be the victim of a crime riding transit in Miami, and 10 times more likely to be the victim of a crime riding transit in San Diego, and the same stats for Dallas and Minneapolis and so on, than you are in New York. So, we have worked really hard with the NYPD, who is our law enforcement agency exclusively in mass transit, to drive down crime. We're having success, and I'm just mystified by why the Secretary of Transportation, who was himself a DA at one point, would be attacking the NYPD, who are doing everything in their power. Supported by Governor Hochul, who's spending big money to put cops on trains at night, to otherwise increase the police force levels, and to invest in infrastructure like cameras. I don't get it. I'm scratching my head, but we're going to try to stay a fact-based organization as we respond to some of this incoming stuff. Mr. Minton.
All right, let's start today with Andrew Siff of WNBC. He's here with Justin Laub, everybody. Andrew.
I'm wondering, at the outset to the meeting today, you said you wanted to keep a calm, cool, professional demeanor.
Yeah.
The Secretary used an expletive to describe the New York City subway system. Were you not tempted to respond in language that he might better understand?
Listen, there's a lot of rhetoric flying around. My principal concern in that setting was, is this man getting transit advice from Phil Murphy? Because if so, if he's standing there next to Phil Murphy getting transit advice, transit in America is doomed.
All right, let's go to Ramsey Khalifa from Gothamist. And
I'll give Andrew, in fairness, Andrew, kidding aside, listen, this is serious stuff. New Yorkers depend on mass transit. This is not a place to throw around expletives or hot rhetoric. There are 6 million New Yorkers a day who depend for their lives to get to work, to get to school, to get to medical appointments, whatever they need to do on transit. It is one of the very few things that makes our city affordable, and I am concerned that it's being drawn into, instead of being treated as a serious and bipartisan issue, as it always has been, it's being treated like it's just another political football. I hope that we'll get past that. We'll give the Secretary a full answer to his questions, but we need to come back to reality, how important this is. This is not a game.
Ramsey Khalifa, right there.
Hey.
Two questions for you. The first one, you mentioned this frequent flyer program this morning.
Yeah.
For the Omni system. Could you just elaborate on that idea a bit more?
I can't, because we have not cooked it up. But the point that I'm making, Ramsey, and you get it, is now we have the ability to, instead of requiring somebody to make your own discount decision by doing the math in your head of whether I want to buy a monthly. Nobody can do that. Nobody knows what they're going to be doing 3 Thursdays from now. We can give benefits based on people's actual usage. And so if they're more frequent users, or they're more frequently in certain routes, or they're combining certain services, we have that ability. And I'm excited because giving discounts and making transit even more affordable is, I think, a huge benefit of the Omni system. And we're going to dig into it and start figuring out how exactly to configure those kinds of programs.
And just a second question. The board today obviously spent a lot of time talking about police assaults.
Yeah.
Was there a particular incident in the last year that maybe shocked the MTA or the NYPD about this specific
issue?
Every day I look at, we're, on an average day, we're between 3 and 7, what they call index crimes, the serious crimes. And every day I look at what happens, and there's a huge number of a particular scenario, which is cop stops someone for fare evasion or for some other offense, and then the offender hits the cop, does a felony assault on a cop. Any attack on a cop classified as a felony assault. Because of what we did in Albany, any attack on a transit worker, thank goodness, is now classified as a felony assault. That pattern has to stop. People need to, no attacking our transit workers, they're public servants, and especially no attacking the folks who are trying to make the whole system safer and do their job. I'm concerned about that, but it was also relevant in the sense that we're trying to understand what the increase that has happened over time with felony assault, where did it come from? That's part of the story.
All right, we really got to move on. Down there in the Hudson River Pavilion, we've got Stefanos Chen of the New York Times.
Yeah.
Steph.
Hi, Jano.
Steph.
So on the presentation today, do you feel that you fully satisfied Secretary Duffy's requests? There were a few items, and there were many, including subway surfing and a few other things that were not really addressed, but seemed...
This is not a substitute for a written response. We're going to complete a written response, which is well underway, and we'll submit it, and everybody will see it. So, yeah, there were definitely items that were raised in Duffy's letter that we still have to address.
And I'm sorry, just a part of that. Do you feel that this will be to the satisfaction of the Secretary and that the threats stop? Is there a level in which...
I don't know. I guess I'm appealing to all of us to, to respect the tradition that, dialogue between states and localities and the federal government on an issue of this seriousness is not handled as a war of words, but rather as in response to, serious analysis, data, and facts. And we're going to stick on that approach.
All right, back from his live shot, Newton Jones Burkett III is right here from Channel 7, Eyewitness News. Newt.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Chairman, how do you think that the NYPD should be tackling these issues of felony assault and how often they seem to be happening? What is the strategy now going forward, as you understand it?
Well, the first strategy is we got to make sure that the charges stick when they go to the DAs. The prosecutors, this is wrapped up in some of the decisions that Albany's making right now. So we need what Governor Hochul has proposed, which is discovery rules that allow prosecutors to bring charges and to have the charges hold up and not to be people not to be let go on technicalities. It's a big issue. We need because a lot of these felony assaults are people with mental health issues who are just a little, need help, and rather than being in the public space, we need the governor's proposal on involuntary commitment to be acted on. We have our scout professionals out there every day, but it's tough to bring somebody in on involuntary commitment on the current law. It should be a more clear standard, and that's what she's doing. And the third thing, Newt, which is important, is we have proposed, and the governor's proposed, that if you're a recidivist offender in transit, which is a sensitive space that needs to be protected, that you should be subject to additional, more serious consequences. Not for nothing, a lot of these recidivist offenders, not all of them, but a lot, are committing sex crimes. They're people who are attracted to the public space because there are a lot of folks there and they keep getting charged with forcible touching or public lewdness. I want those people to be treated with great seriousness and when they come up again and again for that kind of charge. But whatever it is, we want stronger consequences, more serious punishment, and more protection for our workers and our riders when people commit the same crimes over and over again in transit.
let up on quality of life offenses, enforcing the quality of life.
All those things need to be done. The subway is a sensitive public space. The mass transit system is what makes it possible for people to live their lives in New York. Many people don't have a car to jump into, or they only have one family car. They need the system to work so they can live their lives and take advantage of New York and power our economy. You have to protect that space. We're doing it. The governor's doing it. And I'd like some help from the federal government. I mean, did anyone notice those numbers? I mean, the funding from the federal government for transit security has plummeted. New York doesn't get its fair share, but the whole pie has plummeted. They're giving us bupkis, as we say in my part of Brooklyn, and yet, and they're underfunding us. And then they say, well, the taxpayers are being mistreated because you're not doing a great job of what? This isn't your money, federal government. I thought I heard that from Ronald Reagan in the old days. This is New Yorkers' money, which already we don't get our fair share back. But it's especially outrageous in the transit area that we are underfunded so extremely. Half of the nation's transit riders, 17% of the federal money. That's wrong.
All right. He has enjoyed Long Island Railroad's 98% on-time performance. He's here in person today. It's Alfonso Castillo from Newsday. Alfonso.
Hi, Jana. I have a couple Long Island questions, but neither of them LIR, interestingly. First, I don't know if this question may be for Kathy Sheridan. She mentioned that
She ain't
Nassau.
here.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if you would know this. Well, Nassau County joined the Ghost Vehicle Joint Agency Task Force. How's that going to work? Can you foresee interdiction operations on Long Island?
Allison DiSereno, everybody, from Bridges
Chief
and
Operating
Tunnels.
Officer of Bridges and Tunnels.
Hi. The details of all of this have to be worked out at this time, but of course we do these regular interdictions with our other counterparts, with the other agencies on a regular basis in multiple locations throughout this area, and so we will be working on that and looking for other counties that are interested as well.
Secondly, this was brought up by Passengers United for Jano. Can you guarantee that Omni will be available on all Nassau buses before the MetroCard is discontinued?
So I love you, Alfonso, but you know the truth, which is that at the end of the day, Nice Bus has to install the technology themselves. We are doing everything we can. They are committed to get it done by the end of the year, but as you know, at the end of the day, the Long Island Nice Bus system has to do the installation of the validators and the other technology.
All right, we move on to Dave Colon. He's here from Streets Blog. His Knicks are flying, just like the MTA. What can we get from you today, Dave?
That's right. We're holding on to that third seed. Couple for you, Jano. John McCarthy actually helped me out with this earlier today. So thank you, John, because he echoed comments that you made at the CBC breakfast in December, where you were saying that the quicker we get the Omni system in place, I believe we're going to have more ability to do European-style checking on the buses. MetroCard getting phased out at the end of the year, it's going to be, rolling on to the payment system field that we send all of those to. So what is the plan to get this European-style checking up and running? Are we going to start seeing the MTA actually move on any of this? I mean,
Yeah.
2026 comes faster than you think.
Fair point. We're going to have to hire. We're in the process of hiring a lot more Eagle Team folks that will be the fare checkers.
And is that going to be communicated to people? I mean, how is this going to roll out? Do you know yet?
No, but it's not going to be a surprise. Once we have Omni for the first time, we can say to somebody, hey, you got to show me how you paid, whether you paid by Omni card, whether you paid by credit card, whether you paid with Apple Pay or Google Pay. It could all be checked with a validation device, and that's what we're going to start doing.
And then on the, we all got the big announcement for LaGuardia, the Q70 and everything yesterday, the thing you're doing with the Port Authority. But are you concerned at all that there's a lack of, on-street bus lanes? There's the highway bus lane, obviously, but the bus is still going to need to get to the highway. So are you worried that there's going to be a missing link there that's going to kind of slow things down on that bus?
I think that people are pretty happy with the Q70. I don't know the answer to your question about whether there is a potential ability to, problem with respect to their ability to make time before they get to the highway. I'll look into that, but I don't know the answer to your question.
All right, we move on to
As you know, it's a Port Authority funded service, although we operate it, and they are the ones who are leading the charge to make it even faster. But we'll try to get back to you on that.
All right, Elijah Westbrook is here from CBS 2.
Hi, Jano. Good afternoon. When should Washington expect to receive the letter that you plan on giving to
I
Sean
think
Duffy?
the deadline is the 31st.
Yes.
But I expect that we'll probably submit it before that. I don't know the exact date.
So is that something that could happen this week?
It could, but it might not, and we're not going to keep it secret. We're going to share it with the public.
Okay. And my follow-up to that is, after you send that letter out, are you willing to speak with Sean Duffy regarding everything that's transpired, or is the relationship too tense?
No, we're happy to speak to him. I mean, listen, if somebody's, first of all, Secretary of Transportation, federal government, we're always going to be in dialogue with him. Number two, I am optimistic. He had a reputation as a pretty straightforward, not super contentious member of Congress. So I'm hopeful based on that. Number three, we have a good story to tell. We are delivering amazing mass transit service that makes the New York region, which is a huge piece of the national economy, hum. And I think you'd want to invest in that rather than tearing it down. So happy to talk to him. And it started today a little bit with trying to put out some facts and figures that are responsive to the issues that have been raised in some of his public comments.
All right, Arthur Chen is here from Fox 5 right there in the flamboyant orange.
And that's pretty,
just so
pretty simple introduction compared to the other colleagues. But Jano, if
welcome, the one and only Arthur Chen. Yeah.
Now I'm blushing. If these threats turn into action, I know it's a hypothetical, but it's one that carries serious consequences. What can we tell our audience in terms of what it might mean to them? What are those federal funds currently used for? How might life look different for them if those threats?
I don't want to make it more real by saying, oh, this specific grant is at risk or anything like that. But it's no secret. We get about between $1.5 and $2.5 billion a year, varies by year, from the federal government. It goes all to capital, so it does impact. Some of it's formula money and some of it's discretionary. It's gone to things like building more ADA elevators to make stations more accessible. It goes to very basic stuff like maintaining our car fleet. It goes to repairing the power substations that I always talk about that are breaking down and causing delays for riders. So if you pull money away, it has consequences for riders because we can't fix as much stuff or make it better in the way we would. So some person or some neighborhood might not get an ADA elevator as fast as they want. Some riders might be stuck in a tunnel because the power substation broke down. There's a lot of rhetoric that's flying around, but I'm glad to see that his response or his acknowledgement of WMATA's response on some of the same issues has been businesslike, and I hope he'll keep that going with his review of ours.
All right, on the beat for AM New York, Barbara Russo Lennon right down there on the back in the Hudson River Pavilion. Barbara.
Tim. Hi, Mr. Lieber.
Hi.
Just getting back to police for a second.
Yeah.
I think we learned at the meeting before that 31% of assaults in the system are against police.
Yeah.
Is there any way to tell, I don't know if you can answer this, but is there any way to tell like how big of an increase, like say from last year that is?
All I can tell you is I think we're trying to dig into that a little more because we don't have, going back a few years, there wasn't as much breakdown of what the assaults were on, but we're digging into it. We'll give you more information. But there's no question that since we had more enforcement in the system the last couple of years, especially of fare evasion, there have been more assaults on police in those situations. That is part of the increase that we're seeing in felony assaults. But don't get me wrong, this is not an excuse. It needs to be, it's a reason for taking it more seriously, because an assault on a cop is something that we just cannot as a society accept. It's a worse crime, because now you're assaulting the whole order of society when you're attacking a cop who has dedicated their lives to protecting the rest of us. That deserves more serious consequences.
Real quick follow-up. Is there any way to tell which stations have more enforcement, therefore possibly more assaults?
I think you're hypothesizing causal relationships that are not really guaranteed to be scientific. We're going to share the information as soon as we have more of it. Okay.
All right, on to Evan Simcoe Benarski. He's got a guaranteed relationship with the New York Daily News. Evan.
Apparently, we had a labor victory while I was here. Hey, Jano. So you just characterized a couple questions ago today's sort of laying out of the facts as the beginning of this conversation with the feds, or a continuation of the conversation with the feds. I guess this is a conversation that started with Secretary Duffy effectively asking the MTA to Google crime stats for him, and we had, I guess it was on Friday, the secretary go on an obscure Catholic news network and come up with the 56% figure of crime going up, supposedly since 2019 that John McCarthy mentioned. My question for you is, are these guys negotiating in good faith? Do you think that bringing facts to the table is going to lead to a productive conversation, or is New York being used as a prop in a culture war here?
I guess we're going to find out. But again, I mean, listen, you guys have heard me on this before. I lived through the World Trade Center rebuilding. There were again and again moments where rhetoric soared, became much more confrontational and less fact-based. My approach has always been to say, listen, the facts do matter, and you don't mess with, you're not going to mess with our 6 million riders just as a political game. We have to be clear that the riders are depending on us, and they're depending on the federal government to treat them fairly and based on facts. And we're just going to keep that approach.
All right, up to the mezzanine. Julia Joseph is there from News 12, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. Julia.
Thank you. So, Jano, as we all saw in the presentation today, we know that major crime is down, fare evasion is down, but sadly, as you said before, the felony assaults are up. And today, at the Coney Island Sobel Avenue station, a 16-year-old boy was stabbed. I'd like to know first if you could talk about any service disruptions that happened this morning, and then on top of that, as this March 31st deadline looms, does another kind of high-profile situation like this put pressure on you on the MTA?
Well, listen, we're, in fairness, we carry more people in a single day than the whole city of Los Angeles. But right now, so far in 2025, we are having, less than 4.5 crimes a day. What would the city of Los Angeles give to have those stats? Okay, so yes, you're absolutely right. There continue to be crimes that are deeply concerning when it's a youth, violent crime. But as New Yorkers, we all know we keep things in perspective. Like, we understand this is a big city and there are going to be things that happen. So we're going to look into that crime. I don't know what, if any, impact to service there may have been. But the bigger picture is we're not ashamed of individual episodes. We push back on them. But the big picture is we're making huge progress, and our elected officials are prioritizing mass transit safety. That's what New Yorkers need to know.
All right, next up is Haley Brown of the New York Post.
We have two questions. So the first, why hire consultants to oversee phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue subway project? Why not have MTA employees manage the project?
Well, the number one thing is that when you do a project, you don't just hire everybody for a big project, because then you might, when you're done with the project, you would have to fire them, right? We grow quickly for a couple of years to do a big project, and then we contract, number one. Number two, there's some very specialized expertise is overseeing complex tunnel boring operations, for example, complex system computer installations, for example, that we don't have among our day-to-day workforce that works on the more straightforward traditional meat and potatoes transit stuff like tracks and signals and so on. So it's for specialized expertise, and it's because we want to grow our capacity, but on a temporary basis for a particular project. And we're doing it pretty efficiently.
Okay, second question, same project. Phase 2, the $7.7 billion estimate for the work, is that final? And if so, how do you explain to taxpayers that that's one of the costliest subway expansions ever built?
Okay, we'll see if you write it, but I'll say it anyway. The cost of subway the subway systems, when you're talking about just the raw cost, what it really needs to be looked at is in terms of how many people it carries. That's the relevant data, because you have to size the systems and have systems that serve more people if you have a bigger ridership. And by the cost per rider standard, we are at the low end of actual cost. It's not just the raw cost of the system, but the cost per rider that's relevant. Remember, Haley, we carry every day as many people in the New York City subway system as the entire U.S. aviation system. Nobody complains that the federal government pays a ton to run the air traffic control system, or that it pays a ton to invest in airports, when it carries on a daily basis fewer people than the New York City subway system. We need to invest in this. That's a great project, and we're thrilled to talk about it more if you need more information.
All right, next is Samantha Liebman. She's here from New York 1. Ma'am.
Jano, so what do you think accounts for the other about 62% of assaults? Do you think that this is really more of a mental health issue than a policing and crime issue?
I don't know, but I think there are a couple of inputs, and we've talked about many of them today. One is people got, during COVID, there are a lot of public behaviors that broke down. One of them is that people just, got in the habit of fare evading to a greater degree, and now we're pushing back on it. That's number one. Number two is what you talked about, which is the obvious mental health issue that's in our public space. And the MTA individually, and then supported by the governor, has taken extraordinary steps to try to deal with that. It's no secret. And the third is the fact that we're doing a lot more enforcement, and that is prompting more confrontations that seem to end with a felony assault. So each of those, and the fourth is, frankly, that we're not satisfied that the criminal justice system is dealing with, providing enough consequences for some of these behaviors, especially for recidivists. So those are all different variables I think are contributing to it, 4 different ones. I can't tell you how much each one is, but that's my take.
We talked about the new fare raise, and it seems because some of the assaults are happening because of fare evasion enforcement. And I know the governor put a challenge to you to get those fare raise out. When is that happening? It seems like it's just taking a long time.
But Sam, we're waiting for our capital program to be funded. That's where there's $1 billion in there to transform 150 stations that carry 77% of our ridership with new fare gates that are much more of a deterrent to fare evasion than our very old school and somewhat outdated turnstiles. So that's it. But in the meantime, let it be written that the MTA, because of physical interventions, the gate guards, how Demetrius has redesigned the fare array, the turnstiles in many different small ways, we've knocked down fare evasion by 25% in just 6 months. Let it not be said that we're not making progress, even as we're waiting for those new fare gates. As you know, there will be 20 stations that are equipped with the new fare gates, I believe in 2025, Jamie? Yeah, 2025. And we have the procurement underway with 4 finalists. So each of them are going to do 4 or 5 stations in 2025. Okay.
All right, closing out the proceedings today, it's Jose Martinez from the city. Jose.
Is this on? It's working.
Yeah.
Hi, Jano. In your repeated defense or sales pitch of congestion pricing, you have repeatedly said how Donald Trump, you've made the appeal to him as a fellow New Yorker, though perhaps not someone who grew up riding the subway in the 70s, as you often tell us. So how do you make the pitch to Congressman Secretary Duffy, someone who lives in New Jersey and whose connection to the city is not as clear? How do you make that sale in terms of what's good here?
I think you respect the office he holds. He is the Secretary of Transportation of the United States of America. He's responsible for roads. He's responsible for bridges. He's responsible for maritime facilities. He's responsible for railroad infrastructure, and he's also responsible for transit. So I don't presume to tell him, that you have to become a New York City transit expert. He's been given a responsibility, and I'm going to be respectful of the office and try to educate him on some of the issues and the facts. But I don't. It's not a test of your personal background. When you hold that office, you have responsibility, you have powers, and I expect him to exercise them appropriately, and I'm hopeful that he will.
And I know you said you're open to speaking with him.
Sure.
And you've also said you don't want to make a show of this, but would you welcome him to ride the subway with you?
Sure.
All right, thank you, Jano. Thanks, Allison. Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon from Lower Manhattan.